When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Welcome aboard a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SB Live. What's up, everybody? We got a busy show for you today. You know, I took a look at a bunch of different things today regarding the game on Monday night. Watched some of the plays over again, listen to Nick Sirianni. And I definitely want to see if you guys have kind of changed anything about your thought process following that Monday night loss. Look, one of the things about losing a game, it makes you kind of overreact to the moment. But is it an overreaction in the moment for certain things that we saw on Monday night? So let's look at this. What's not fixable? What is fixable? Those are the things that I want to kind of dive into on this. What day of the week is it? Wednesday afternoon. What is fixable? What's not fixable? What is one of those things where you're like, that's a one-time deal. It's not something that's a perpetual problem with this team. And what are some of the things that are going to be perpetual? You know, one of the things that's becoming perpetual is Jalen Hurts turning the ball over. Is that something that continues to worry? Are we starting to become worried about Jalen Hurts? 2, the play call at 3rd down and 3, which has been debated back and forth, upside down and inside out. Some people like it, some people don't. And if you're one of those people that just can't cognitively think for yourself and you're only going to go one direction, you probably think it's the worst play call ever. And if you're someone that kind of says, look, I like the fact that they were really aggressive in that moment, and that's who they are, and when they went to the Super Bowl, that's who they were, and that's why they were really good, because they trusted their players, they believed in themselves, and they executed. You know, somebody tweeted at me today and said the coaches need to it's their job to put the players in position to make plays. Oh, you mean like scheming a guy wide open? Would you rather him double covered? So, like, I get it. You didn't like the fact that they threw a pass, but they called a pass play and the guy was wide open. He dropped it. We could debate it back and forth. It goes back to what we said before. Because you would not have made that call, you think your call would have worked. So let's play along. I'm the quarterback. I turn around. I hand it off to Saquon Barkley. Barkley gets hit for a 1-yard gain. Now it's 4th down and 2. And I know your answer is, yeah, but 40 seconds have run off the clock. Okay, I'm going to play along with that too. There was about 1 minute and 40 seconds left in the game. So if 40 seconds come off the clock, there's still about 1 minute left in that game for Atlanta to go down the field and score. I don't know that we're changing the outcome of what Atlanta did. I think they were going down the field to score, whether it was 105, 45, 35. They seemed like they were cooking with oil by that time. So I'm taking the play call out of it because so much of that is based on analytics, what the chart says. And Nick Sirianni talked a lot about that today at his day after press conference. He really was prepared for an answer here. He was really ready to go with, why did you run that play? So let's get into that a little bit later. But let's look at some of the things that we can continue to ask questions about. Is Jalen Hurts turnovers, are they becoming a problem? That's 1. 2, let's just throw this blanket statement out and play along with me. would we be having the discussion we're having if A.J. Brown played in that game? I mean, is it fair to say, hey, look, I get it. The Eagles aren't the same team without A.J. Brown. Like if I told you, I got breaking news. The Eagles aren't winning the Super Bowl if A.J. Brown doesn't play. You'd say, Mike Gill, that's obvious. So the fact that they lost the game without A.J. Brown, is it cause for alarm? Should we be alarmed by the fact that they lost the game without A.J. Brown? Are we questioning things because they didn't have A.J. Brown? Like, this is like when I talk about in the middle of summer. If I lose a bunch of games without Bryce Harper, that's not the identity of my team. Of course I'm not winning the World Series if Bryce Harper's hurt. I don't expect to. Should I expect to win a game without A.J. Brown? I don't know if expect is the right thing. Should I just expect to walk on an NFL field without my best offensive weapon and say, I'm still going to beat you? You might be able to beat you, but I don't think it's a rite of passage. So let's remember that as well. But here's a couple things that I think we can debate and not almost say aren't debatable. What I saw on Monday night that makes me worried that I don't know that they can fix is the pass rush. I would be legitimately concerned, and if you said, Mike Gill, I'm concerned about the pass rush, I can't argue with you on that one. The other ones, I can have an argument. I might agree with you, but I can at least take the other side and have an argument. You know, I could be open-minded. I might take my side, but I can at least see the other side. I'm always willing to look at the other side. But if you're trying to convince me that there's pass rush hidden somewhere in here, I ain't seeing it. I'll listen. If you have it, let me know. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Because I don't know where they're getting pass rush. And listen, we all make an initial opinion. My initial opinion was Bryce Huff was not a good signing. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. And I don't think I'm going to change my mind. That said, I hope Bryce Huff changes my mind. I hope by week 8 I said, man, that guy proved me wrong. I don't see it. I think Bryce Huff can't play. But Mike Gill, he had 10 sacks last year. He had a contract year. Those seem to boost your sack totals conveniently. What I watched of Bryce Huff was a guy who was small, didn't have great hand placement, gets overmatched at times, one-dimensional player. You get an off season of watching him on tape. See, here's what happens. Man gets 10 sacks. Nobody ever heard of this guy. Anybody ever hear of Bryce Huff? No, you never heard of Bryce Huff. He gets 10 sacks. He comes out of the wilderness and gets 10 in a contract year. Then he gets $51 million. So what happens? These teams say, what the hell did I miss? Let me watch this guy. Let me watch why this guy got paid $51 million. So you spend an offseason, and you say, who's on our schedule this year? And you say, we play the Eagles this year. Guess what? I got to watch this guy on tape. What is he doing that he got paid $51 million for? I never heard of this guy. And all of a sudden, the tape is out. They made the adjustments. Did Bryce Huff. And I don't have the confidence that he did. I don't have the confidence that Bryce Huff made the adjustments, but I'm not even going to go to Bryce Huff first. I'm going to go to Jalen Carter. This defense is built around Jalen Carter. This defense was put together with Jalen Carter in mind. Vic Fangio wants Jalen Carter to be his stud. And if he's not his stud, guess what? We got big problems. You know, when Vic Fangio puts a defense together, I know we want him to blitz. He blitzed one time the other day. Guess what happened? Touchdown, Atlanta. This defense is predicated on getting pressure with 4, just like Desai's and just like Gannon's. He can't get pressure with 4 right now for multiple reasons. 1, his inside pass rush is non-existent. 2, if you get inside pass rush, right, that helps the edge rushers because, man, I got this mammoth man in the middle pushing my center back all by himself. I need to help him out with a guard. If Jalen Carter's pushing the center back into the backfield, I might need a guard to help out the center because he can't handle him by himself. And then what does that do? It allows the tackle, the edge rushers, to go one-on-one. And then that's where Bryce Huff should have some sort of move in his arsenal to get a little bit of pressure. But he is now not needing – they don't need double teams on the interior because there's no push there. So now you got 3 guys against 2, and they're just owning you right now. The guard is just kind of setting back, and he's saying, well, we got no pressure here. I got nothing coming up the middle, and I'm just kind of hanging out back here. This is great. This team stinks. This team's got no pass rush. Josh Sweat, the Eagles told us, okay? The Eagles told us before the season that they thought Josh Sweat was a declining player. So much so that they told him, we're not going to pay you what you got paid the year before because we didn't like your performance. And Josh Sweat acquiesced and said, okay, I'll take less, right? Josh Sweat got paid less money than he did the year before because they saw the writing on the wall. We don't want to get rid of you because we've already lost Hassan Reddick, or we're already going to lose Hassan Reddick. So they restructured his contract. They saw a guy that one season was a big part of their defense, Josh Sweat. He had 11 sacks in 2022. Last year, he only had 6.5 sacks. So all of a sudden, they're getting a guy with a lot of pressure, and those pressures went down. You know, we don't think about this, but Josh Sweat has been in the league 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is his 7th year in the league. At some point, you get a guy who is just not the same player that he was. And if he's not the same player that he was 2 years ago, and if he's not the same player as he was last year, what's left over? So the Eagles had to have some intuition that their pass rush was a problem. And that's why I start with asking the question, what are some of the things that we saw Monday night that should concern us? And I think number one on that list, forget the play call, forget Nick Sirianni, forget Jalen Hurts right now. I think Hurts we can discuss a little bit more later. But in this league, if you don't have pass rush, what do you got? You had a team a couple of years ago that had 70-plus sacks. You went to the Super Bowl with that team. You had a team last year that got to the quarterback 30 times less than the year before. And what did you have? You had a playoff team that got knocked out in the first round. What's the drop-off in sacks from this year to last year? You dropped 30 sacks one year. Are you going to drop from what you had? What did they have last year? 44 sacks? Something in that range. I think they had like 40, 44, 45, something like that. You dropped almost 30 sacks from the year before, and you saw the difference in what it meant to your defense. If this defense can't even replicate what they did last year, you got all sorts of problems on that side of the ball. That said, I still go back to, I think this team needs a little bit of time on the defensive side to grow together. You got Vic Fangio and trying to do what he's doing. And I think this is going to take a little time with a lot of young voices. They're all trying to communicate. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. You got a bunch of guys that are kind of young. You've got Sweat, who's still a second-year player. You've got Huff's kind of a young player. He's in a new system now. So I think you are going to see some bumps in the road. And I turn around and I look at that scoreboard on Monday night, and I said, there's a minute left in this game. Actually, there was less than a minute. There was less than a minute in that game. And that scoreboard said Falcons 15. It's a game that you probably need to win in the NFL. In today's NFL, you give up 15 points. Now, I know they scored, and it went from 15 to 22. But if I'm giving up 15 points with a minute left in that game, I'm thinking my offense has scored enough points to win that game even if they get that late touchy-boo. So, are we starting to hit the panic button? Are we rethinking that? Where do we sit on a Wednesday? 609-403 604-0973. Josh Hennings, my producer. What do you have for me?
So the 43 sacks the Eagles had last year was bottom third in the NFL. They were tied with the Minnesota Vikings in the bottom 12 of the NFL in sacks
And
last
how many?
year. 43.
Yeah, I said 44. I was one off. Damn it. I'm having a bad day. 44 was the number. How many the year before? 72.
70.
70? All right, so they were 26 off from the year before. If they drop off from what they were last year to this year, and they drop another 26, you're in big trouble.
Well, I was going to say, so
What was the lowest amount of sacks in the NFL last year?
that's the Carolina Panthers had 27.
That would be pretty bad.
Yeah, the worst blitzing team last year was the Carolina Panthers, followed by the Chicago Bears at 30.
Rich in Mays Landing. One thing I haven't heard anybody mention is when Jalen Hurts was intercepted in the fourth quarter the other night, everyone is talking about what a bad pass and bad decision. Nobody said anything about getting him getting hit.
He got hit after the throw,
I don't
though.
think, because I watched that play from multiple different angles, and I thought the same thing when he threw it, which is still a bad pass whether he got hit or not. I don't think that hit had anything to do with the pass. He just made a bad throw.
The hit came after he already made the decision to throw that
Yeah, I
ball.
watched that, and Rich says it totally affected where the ball was thrown. I don't agree with you.
I disagree entirely.
Yeah, I watched that video from multiple different angles. I watched it from the All-22. I watched it from the end zone cam. He got rid of that ball before he got hit. He got hit after that ball was thrown. It was just a bad throw. And guess what, Rich? I'm glad you brought that up because of all the things that happened in that game, the 3rd and 3 play call, the poor pass rush. The thing that bothers me the most is that Hurts decision. Because even if he got hit and couldn't step into the throw, it's a bad decision. You don't need to make that throw. All you need is 15 yards and you had a timeout. You don't have to try to force a throw to the sideline. You had the whole middle of the field. And all he has to do is find someone in the middle of the field, let them get 10, 12, 15 yards, call timeout, and now you're in field goal range
Right.
with one of the best kickers in the NFL. So, Rich, I saw the video. I don't agree with your take of the video. That's fine. You saw something. And I'll actually send you the videos that I was watching where I do not see. Initially, it looked like he got hit, and I still think even if he got hit, it's a bad decision. You don't make that throw.
He made a bad read, okay? You go back and rewatch the play, you realize that he made a decision very early on that he was looking for Devonta Smith.
609-403-0973. Yeah, I think he was just trying to make a big play. I think he was trying to make a big play
And Hurts
not
admitted
have
that.
to rely on the field goal kicker to kick a 60-yard field goal. Jeff in Ocean City says, I believe Jalen was told if Barkley was not wide open or run or take a sack, Barkley was wide open and dropped the damn ball. Jeff, you're 100% right about that. In fact, I think Sirianni said after the game, to which some people thought he kind of threw Hurts under the bus a little bit by saying that there was, basically check down in that if the play wasn't there, just throw it away. If that play is not 100% wide open, just throw it away and take the field goal. Well, the play wasn't only there, the guy was wide open.
Right.
So what are you supposed to do? You're the quarterback. You make that throw. The question was, what was your thought process on 3rd and 3 to call out on the pass? Is there a mechanism where the quarterback just sits down and takes the sacks? Sirianni says, yeah, definitely. They were running a certain defense and junking it up in the middle, so we were trying to go around the outside, and it didn't work. But he said right at the front there, is there a mechanism where Hurts just sits down and takes a sack? Sirianni said, yeah, definitely. So if the play was not there, Hurts was not supposed to throw it into coverage. It's only, hey, roll out, and if Barkley's wide open, throw him the ball. And
Which
if
he
not,
was.
just throw it out of bounds.
And he was wide open.
He was very open. He was very, very wide open. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Mike, I'm worried that the pass rush won't get much better. You typically don't find pass rushers mid-season. Sounds like you've been listening closer, Terry. I know yesterday you didn't listen very close, but I did say this last week that you don't find pass rushers in the middle of the season. And if they can't find pass rushers in-house, I don't know where you're getting it. And I do agree that I am worried about the pass rush. I was worried about the pass rush in training camp, and I'm worried about the pass rush now.
I'm not saying this is the answer to all the problems, but I am curious because you are going to have Jeff Mosher on later today on the show, Mike. Mosher brought up last week about the fact that Devin White was a great blitzer in Tampa. Is maybe Devin White a guy that could be that edge rusher to kind of supplement that pass rush?
Don't think so. Great blitzer maybe up the middle from the linebacker position, not as an edge rusher. I mean, I don't see him replacing, Bryce Huff on the edge. You need edge rush. You need outside, because even if he's a great blitzer, you're not blitzing every play. He doesn't want to blitz.
Right.
Vic Fangio does not want to. Nobody wants to blitz. I don't want to say nobody. We had Malcolm Jenkins on the show, was it last year or 2 years ago?
Football Radio
and
Row.
We asked him, it wasn't at Radio Row. I think we had him on the show again after that. And we asked him whether or not, I think it was with John Gannon. It was obviously John Gannon because last year it didn't really come up nearly as much. But because the Eagles' defense was number 1 in the league or 2, and John Gannon blitz, and Malcolm Jenkins said any coordinator worth his salt does not want to blitz. A blitz by nature is a gimmick, and coordinators don't want to be gimmicky. They want to rush with 4 and have the rest of the guys back in coverage and make the quarterback have to read the defense and make a decision. Clarence in Delaware says, Mike, your prop pick was Bryce Huff, and now you hate the guy. No, Clarence, I didn't like Bryce Huff before. I didn't like the signing when they made it. I did make that prop bet, but that has nothing to do with my thoughts on Huff. I thought he stunk when they signed him. I was not a fan of the signing when they made the signing, but I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt by betting on him to get a half of a sack. I actually thought he actually was 1 yard away from getting a half of a sack. Did you know that? Did the play where him and I think Jalen Carter tackled Kirk Cousins, but Cousins gained a yard. In fact, on the play, Buck said it's not counted as a sack because he gained a yard on the play. I thought I actually got that one, Clarence. But no, I don't care about losing that bet. Mike, Hassan Reddick, or they could swap a pick for Clowney. I think Clowney's a shot fighter. When's the last time Clowney was any good? Right? I mean, when was the last time Clowney had any impact? I feel like Clowney's been on a different team every single year. I feel like Clowney just bounces from Cleveland to, where is he at now? Carolina. I'm out on Clowney. The Reddick thing, look, if there was a way they can make an offer for Reddick, here's the problem now with Reddick, in my opinion. He hasn't had any training camp. He's just going to come in and all of a sudden, be Hassan Reddick and start wrecking havoc back there. I'm not sure about that either. I mean, listen, if they made the trade to get Reddick and come back, we'd all be excited. We'd be ready to go. We'd be like, yeah, let's go. Is he going to be the same guy? You don't have any training camp, nothing. You got nothing. And you're going to come back in here and all of a sudden you're just going to go and be the same guy? Clowney, to me, last year Clowney, 9.5 sacks in Baltimore. Year before that, he had 2 sacks in Cleveland. He had, 9. He's been okay. He never had Clowney's never had double-digit sacks. How many years has he been in the league? He's been in this is his 11th year now. Yeah, I don't think Clowney is doing much for you. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. Here we go. Malcolm Jenkins. I asked him, as a guy who played in this league on defense, high level, all pro, do you want your defense blitzing?
If I've got a D-line, that has no premier pass rusher that can't get to the quarterback, then you say, yes, we need to blitz to manufacture some pressure because we can't get it with 4. But you ask any coordinator, worth their salt, if they can get pressure with Ford, they would rather that than to have to blitz. Because whenever you blitz, you take a guy out of coverage, you put more exposure on the back end, greater chance for big plays.
Malcolm Jenkins said that. He said any coordinator worth their salt, they don't want to blitz. Neither does Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio does not want to blitz. 609-403-0973. Text board is rocking today. Let's get it going. Let's keep it going. Phil's win last night. Magic number. Oh, baby, it's down to 1. They win today. They are in the playoffs. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. Was it an encouraging start from Ranger Suarez last night? We'll get that. Thoughts on the Birds. John McMullen, Grayson's grades. Fine 5, ugly 5. 5 best, 5 worst teams. I can tell you this. The Saints might be in it this week. It's certainly not in the ugly 5. Stick around. More Sports Bash coming up on 97.3.
You're listening.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer. For thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week, and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
With Mike Gill
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
on 97.3 ESPN.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SB Live. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City going to jump on board. Of course, Eagles getting ready for the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But the Phils win last night as well. And Mike, the magic number is 1. It's the loneliest number sometimes, but it's 1 to make the playoffs. If they win tonight, they will be back in the playoffs. But Ranger Suarez last night, you got him on the mound. Thoughts on what you saw? Did he settle anybody down, or do we still have big questions about Ranger moving forward?
Well, I think you still have questions about Ranger going forward from the way he pitched the other night. He was just basically mediocre, right? So right now, I don't really know what his role is on this team because, you know, you have Zach Wheeler, who was magnificent last night. You have Aaron Nola. You have Christopher Sanchez, who's been tremendous. Right now, it looks like when you get to the postseason, if you see Ranger Suarez, the Phillies are going to be in trouble because that means the starter had got knocked around in the first, second, or third inning, and Ranger had to come in to get out of an incident there or something like that. So I don't really know what has happened with Ranger. You know, they say he's healthy, but his velocity is down. He's not the same pitcher he was early in the season. And right now he's really kind of, really changed almost the arc of his entire career from what we thought it would be back in May when he was arguably the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah, obviously Wheeler last night was awesome. I mean, that's the kind of, I was thinking about this morning. Wheeler, at first you're like, man, he might. I say this only because, I mean, obviously Harper would be up there as a free agent signing as more impactful, but you didn't think this was what you were getting when you signed Wheeler, right? I mean, you knew Wheeler from the Mets days, but did you ever envision him being this guy?
No, absolutely not. Certainly not the horse and the guy that he's been for the Phillies, a guy that has taken the ball, every fifth day for 4 years. When he was with the Mets, he obviously missed the 2 seasons because of Tommy John surgery. He had some injury issues. He had that really good second half of his final season at the Mets, and the Phillies gave him a contract. And I agree with you. For what the Phillies paid for him, for his deal, coming out of time when, Garrett Cole was also on the market, I think Wheeler's one of the best, if not the best, free agent signing in Philadelphia Phillies history. And a guy who's just, I know people would rather have championships than individual awards, but he's just pitched in tough luck when it comes to the Cy Young Award. I mean, Chris Sale's probably going to beat him out this year, but if you pick who's the best pitcher maybe in all of baseball or at least the National League the last 3 or 4 years, it's Zach Wheeler.
Last night, let's get into Wheeler. Obviously he was awesome last night. He's going to be the number one guy. And I brought up Suarez at first. He obviously pitched the game 2 nights ago because last night, you got Wheeler, and then there's decisions. And Rob Thompson, has a lot of decisions to make. He's getting asked about the roster construction, the bullpen situation, who the bench is going to be. But you ultimately have to make this Ranger Suarez decision on, is he your third guy? Is he your fourth guy? And if he is your fourth guy, what do you do with him the days he's not starting? Does he become the guy who just doesn't pitch at all? Or do you envision that right now, if the playoffs started tomorrow, does Ranger Suarez have some role in the bullpen starting wise? Because I think right now that's a huge key moving forward. And I say that because obviously the magic number being 1, this is what their next thoughts are going to have to start being.
Yeah, to me, he's a bullpen guy. To me, he's almost in that role of right now the Noah Syndergaard, Kyle Gibbons, the guy who maybe has to make 1, maybe 2 starts if you go on a deep playoff run. But he's not getting the ball, in the division series in games 1, 2, or 3, and I think he goes to the bullpen. And like I said before, if you see him in any of those games, it means the Phillies are in a little bit of trouble because the starter didn't have it. So I think that's his role. He has 2 starts left in the regular season, Mike. I don't see any way you can put him ahead of the 3 guys or ahead of Christopher Sanchez. You could make a case that Christopher Sanchez has been the Phillies' second best pitcher this year, basically. You have a discussion whether you want Sanchez in game 2 or Nolan in game 3 or vice versa. But right now, Ranger Suarez, to me, is in that Noah Syndergaard, Kyle Gibbons bullpen / okay, we need a starter for this playoff game, if you go on a deep run roll.
Yeah, I know that last year they needed Christopher Sanchez made those 2 starts. He was kind of the guy.
Right,
but he didn't pitch in any other games, right? It was just those 2.
Yeah, and I think Ranger can be a little bit more versatile. He's shown the ability to come out of the bullpen. There seems to be some speculation, about what kind of shape he's in. Is he getting tired? So maybe if he goes to the bullpen, he can ramp it up for an inning or 2 and be more effective. But yeah, it's just a fascinating question because here's a guy, Mike, that the Phillies thought, he's going to be a free agent after next season. This is a guy who, if he pitched the way he pitched in April, May, and the beginning of June, was going to earn himself a lot of money and maybe force the Phillies to kind of, in this offseason, try and lock him up the same way they did with Christopher Sanchez earlier this season. But right now, with the way he's ended the season, I think you play it out and see what he actually performs like next season. If he performs great, kudos to him. He's going to make a lot of money. But if he doesn't, he probably cost himself a lot of money with the way he's pitched the last couple of months.
Yeah, do you agree that right now, between now and the end of the season, that's one of the biggest things they got to figure out, if not the biggest?
Yeah, it's the starting rotation, and I guess the other question they have is just the bench. Do they want to carry 13 pitchers, or do they want to go with the extra guy, the extra bat off the bench? Those are the 2 questions you have, because a lot of their other questions, Mike, are being answered, right? We worried about Bryce Harper and the power. Well, he hits a home run last night. He had 2 home runs on Saturday. We worried about the health of the team. Well, they're getting healthy. Edmundo Sosa's back. Austin Hayes is coming back. We worried about, Trey Turner. He's looked good. Schwarber's been hot. JT, health-wise, is back, looks healthy behind the plate there. So a lot of the other questions that we've had about this team are answering themselves, and they're kind of on the upswing going into the playoffs here. So, yeah, some minor questions to sort of handle as they get ready for, what hopefully for them is a deep postseason run.
Yep, and obviously they got the Brewers tonight. Then they'll play the Mets for 4. This is the Mets' last-ditch effort to try to get themselves into this division situation. I would imagine that the Mets are kind of not there because they're in this wild card chase, probably more focused on that. But they still have some games with some meaning, so that's a good thing, is that even if they clinch a playoff berth, and last night Rob Thompson said, yeah, we might do a little something if they clinch. But, the fact that they still have some games with some meaning between now and the end.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely great for them because a lot of times when teams clinch this division early, they're going into games that don't matter a lot, and they have a tendency. It's only human nature that you're going to take the foot off the gas a little bit. Well, there'll be no foot off the gas for the 4 games in Citi Field because the Mets need every one of those games. The Mets right now are tied with Arizona for that 5th/6th wild card spot. And the Mets are battling for their playoff lives, 2 games up on the Braves right there. So those 4 games in Citi Field this weekend, they're going to be played with the same sort of playoff intensity that we saw the games played this past weekend at Citizens Bank Park. And I think that's just great for the Phillies. Get in the habit of playing those emotional, high-level playoff-type games, and then you can go into the final week of the season and kind of make sure everybody's healthy and line up your pitching and stuff like that. But I think it's great to play as many meaningful games as possible, and I think it'll benefit the Phillies. And like I said, these 4 games at Citi Field, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they're going to be playoff-like games because the Mets need each and every one of them.
They do, and the Phillies, obviously, they're going to go with Taijuan Walker. So we haven't seen the end of Taijuan Walker. I think we brought him up the other day, but he's back. You know, we always bring it up, Mike. It's, you know, fans are like, Kobe Allard, why don't you throw him? And then you see why they don't, you know, rush to bring the Allards of the world, the Tyler Phillips of the world out there. That's why they got a Taijuan Walker. I know he hasn't been very good either, but you know, for the money they're paying him, that's one of the reasons why they kept kind of going back to him, because they really didn't have another option, and we saw that over the last really 3 weeks since he got demoted.
Right, you need pitching depth, right? And he throws the 3 shutout innings against the Mets on Saturday, and they need a pitcher for Thursday. And they say, okay, he's had some success against the Mets here. Let's throw him out here. His former team, he was teammates with a lot of the guys on the Mets. Maybe he has some inside information or something like that. But you're exactly right. When people want them to sort of leave Taijuan Walker by the side of the road, I always told people, I've told you, said a million times, there are 162 of these things. And every time I've ever gone to a game, somebody walks up to the mound and pitches. Somebody's got to pitch, and there are 162 of them, 9 innings every day. You got to fill it, and that's why they didn't, throw Taijuan Walker overboard when it seemed like all of the Delaware Valley and South Jersey wanted them to do exactly that.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Let's get maybe an unpopular opinion that I agree with, by the way. Too much Jason Kelce.
I've been saying this, Mike, for months. It's too much. I mean, you could ask certain people. A good friend of mine, Tim Kelly from Phillies Nation and on Patterson, he's been texting me all the time about it. I just think it's way too much. He's on my TV every time I turn around. Even when I'm not watching the Eagles play, he was on my television. He's in Buffalo drinking beer with the fans at Buffalo. I go to Citizens Bank Park. He's on the scoreboard. I go to a Sixers game. He's ringing the bell. I go to CIL City. He's tending bar. I go to a mummer's parade. He's dressed like a mummer. Every time I turn on ESPN Monday Night Football, he's in the booth for the whole half, and the whole pregame show is a Jason Kelce love fest. Enough. I've had it. I've hit my limit. Granted, I'm not the target audience for it, but geez, can we have a little bit of a break here? Huh? Just a little one.
I would have to agree. And listen, I think everybody says, I like Kelce. I think ESPN, has handled his, employment poorly. Like, I don't think this is the right role. Then they put him in the booth the other night with Aikman and Buck. That was clunky. He's talking. Aikman's supposed to be breaking the play down. He's talking about a touchdown. His mic sounded too low. They got him breakdancing up on the stage. He's doing it was too much Kelce for me. He needs to get a little bit in the backdrop. So we agree on that one for sure. I like, obviously with, I said, you don't see Ryan Clark jump in the booth when the Steelers are on Monday Night Football, or Marcus Spears doesn't get in the booth when the Cowboys are on Monday Night Football. Like, what was the reasoning for this? I don't get it. It's too much for me. Way too much.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously a lot of it has to do with his brother and who his brother dates as far as Taylor Swift. And that doesn't even bother me. I know people go nuts during the game, so they're showing Taylor Swift too much. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But Jason Kelce, 3 words, less is more.
Yeah, and I actually think that ESPN should have just said, hey, listen, this is the role for Kelsey. Monday Night Football, Kelsey's in the tailgate every week. Go find the best tailgate and tell us all about it. Having him up on the set up there, I don't know that that's the best spot for him either. Whatever, we'll see. The Eagles don't play again on Monday Night Football. What? They don't play do they play another game on Monday night this year?
I'm not sure.
No, they don't. That was their only Monday Night Football game.
Right, which is why, I can see why they sort of force-fed it to us a little bit, and I don't even care about the pregame show. I just thought it was silly. I had it on as background noise as I sort of did some other work and stuff like that. But when they put him in the booth, and it seemed like he was supposed to be in there for one segment, and then he kept coming back and back and back, and it's a good football game, and I thought you're kind of missing something from it's supposed to be a national broadcast. It's not, Eagles TV, basically, and I thought it became a little bit too much of that, and you put that on top of what I think is just every time I turn around, there's Jason Kelsey, and, I just can't take it anymore.
By the way, he's on Buffalo Wild Wings, Wawa Hoagies, Campbell Chunky Soup, General Mills Cereal, NFL Play 60. That's just some of the commercials that he appears on. He's doing pretty well in the post-retirement there.
And look, he does a lot of good stuff for charity. I'm sure he's a great guy, great football player, a Hall of Famer. Just keep him out of the booth. That's all I say. That's all I ask.
By the way, some news on the Sixers. According to the mayor, they have ensured that the Sixers will be staying in Philadelphia. A agreement has been reached with the Philadelphia 76ers for an arena in Center City. That has just been announced here recently. So they're not moving to Camden. My idea of Mays Landing apparently getting shot down. Atlantic City or any other place, not happening. They're going to stay in Philadelphia. All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. And, of course, the Phillies and the Brewers. We got the Eagles this weekend. We'll talk more about that on Friday's show with Mike here on the Sports Bash. All right, Mike, take care, man.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
All right, there's Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. You can watch the show live on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. So, you take a look at the Phillies real quick, and the lineup should be out here, I guess, in a little bit. What time did the Phillies play tonight? It's a getaway day for them, so is this an early – am I missing that they're having an afternoon game today, or is this it's a Wednesday? What time did the Phillies play today? They play – no, I thought they played tonight, right? Yeah, 7:40, so it's actually a late game tonight. Same as last night. And what they have tonight, you got Nola pitching against Peralta, so it's a big start for Nola. They got a couple decisions to make. Sanchez or Nola in Game 2. That's got to be something they're starting to think about here. Right? Yeah. Do you want Sanchez pitching at Citizens Bank Park, or do you want Sanchez to pitch on the road, and is he your Game 3 guy? Is Nola your Game 2 guy? I think that's something. Austin Hayes, by the way, trending towards being back maybe this weekend, so that's another decision that's going to have to be made. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Coming up at 3 o'clock, John McMullen will give us the latest. Nick Sirianni talked today. Did he clear up enough for you? Plus your text messages, I read them off. Coming up next on the Sports Bash on 97.3.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer. For thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. We've got McMullen coming up in 6 minutes from now. Get his thoughts on the presser today from Nick Sirianni. Grayson's grades. He'll grade out the Monday night loss at about 3:30 today. Find 5, ugly 5, 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL. Jeff Mosher has today's football at 4. Knicks Nuggets are coming up. And Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports on the NFL. Overreactions. I want to tell you about some unbeatable lease offers from my friend Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City. You know, right now, till the end of the month, you could drive home in a 2025 Integra for just $399 a month with $29.95 down. If you need more room, it is a 2024 RDX all-wheel drive. It's yours, just $393 a month with $49.95 down. Visit Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road, EHT, the small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. Coming up, John McMullen. You know, today, Nick Sirianni tried to explain his decision-making behind the play call on 3rd down and 3. Did he do enough for John? I know John didn't have a problem with the play call, but will people say, you know what, that makes some sense? There's some cognitive thinking on this one. Probably not. But that's coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. More Sports Bash coming up. Johnny Mack is next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Analytics is a piece. League study is a piece. This game always comes down to players and plays, right? What plays do you have the most confidence in to your players in those particular cases, right? And so that's where your confidence is coming from to go for things on that.
Nick Sirianni today addressing the play calls, addressing the media on why 3rd and 3 make that decision. And he had some ammunition. I don't know that it sold anybody. If you were somebody who didn't like the play, he probably didn't sell you at all. But he passionately said, I would do it then, I'd do it again. Looking back at it, doesn't have a problem with it. Should he? No. Would he do it again? Sounds like it. John McMullen was there. Birds 365, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. I was on there this morning. We got into it about this very topic, John McMullen. And now Nick Sirianni, I don't know, he tried to clear it up a little bit more. He basically said, look, this is my reasoning. This was the process behind why I did what I did. I don't know that it's going to sway anybody, but did you like the way he handled that today?
Yeah, I thought he handled it as well as you can handle it. I mean, there's this, you know, you can go on, Nick was joking, you can go on the internet and punch some numbers into about 20 different websites and it'll tell you what to do, which probably didn't go over well with his boss, to be honest, because they're a very analytically driven organization. But from the standpoint of explaining decision-making, you know, you can also go on the internet and look up anything. The first thing they tell you is a good decision doesn't guarantee a good outcome. But if you make good decisions consistently, there's a much better chance for you to get consistently good outcomes. So that's a tough thing for many people to wrap their heads around. But that's sort of the thought process to it. And you're right. You're not going to sway anybody. You know, if they don't believe it was the proper call, they're going to stick to their guns. Even though the play was going to work if the player executed the play. So I don't know that it goes much further than that. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you this, Mike. One drop pass has highlighted just how tenuous the situation in Philadelphia is. And this harkens all the way back to Jeffrey Lurie and his decision to straddle the fence. And, you know, to be honest, he didn't want to bring Nick Sirianni back, but he didn't have the courage of his convictions to move on from the winningest coach in franchise history and come across as an overreactionary type owner. And now you have this situation where the head coach can't even overrule the offensive coordinator if he wanted to. It's a terrible, terrible situation, which I've said from day one.
Yeah. Now, he made it the other night like, hey, if you want to try to stir that up, he's trying to make it like he said. He opened up today by saying, this isn't something we decide on in the moment. We've made that decision ahead of time. So, in other words, this is a organizational decision that in that kind of situation, this is what we're comfortable doing. We're comfortable running a play like that. Is that what you gathered from that?
Yeah, I mean, this team has been very successful, and he mentioned, and it really dates back to before Nick Sirianni. It dates back to Doug Peterson. They were the most aggressive team in football before others, and it was a big advantage for them until others around the league started to catch up and started to go in that same direction. They're still one of the more aggressive teams. Detroit probably the most aggressive, and the same thing happened to Detroit. When it works, everybody loves it. When it doesn't, they criticize the coach that got them to the NFC Championship game. So it's just part of it, and you have to live with it, and you have to persevere. The problem for Nick is, he was stripped of significant power. So yet he still almost, has to go out and explain the decisions of others. Because, that's Kellen Moore's purview. So if you're angry at the play, and by the way, I think the play was fine, well, you should be angry at Kellen Moore, because he's the one who called the play.
Well, in the post-game presser on Monday night, and a lot of people might have saw this because it was so late, but Sirianni was asked about, is there, a mechanism in which that play, if it's not there, that you just throw it away and you take the sack. So, in other words, they're saying, look, unless that thing is 100% wide open, don't throw it, just throw it away. It was 100% wide open, so he threw it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was an easy play to execute, and one of their best players didn't execute it. It happens. And I don't think it goes much further than that. But the point is, if it wasn't completely wide open, the plan was then you just take the sack or put your head down and get as many yards as you can if you're the quarterback, because you want the clock to run. And there was that fail-safe in there. But as you said, he was wide open.
Definitely wide open.
And it was a perfectly thrown pass, and he didn't make the play.
Did make the play. And look, there's a lot. And I talked about it. I think a lot of people love blaming the coach. He is not the most popular guy, and then the organization did him no favors. That being said, with some of the things that happened on Monday night, let's take a look at some of the things that we should be concerned about moving forward. Number one, the pass rush, okay? That's got to be at the top of the list. Of all the things that happened Monday night, can we all agree maybe, or do you think there's a coming around or a come to Jesus moment that this pass rush is all of a sudden going to, be a factor? Or do we think this is going, they went from 70 sacks to 40 sacks. That's almost, it was like 42 or something. It was at 30 less sacks from one year to the next. Well, if they drop off from what they had last year, they're in real trouble. So is that a legitimate thing moving forward? The play call, this, that, those things, okay, we can debate them till the cows come home. But some of the things that might linger, is that one?
Yeah, the 70 sack was an anomaly. You and I talked about that a lot of times. Even if Jonathan Gannon returned, if they brought back everybody they lost, they weren't getting 70 sacks again. So if that's the standard, you're gonna be failing short of the standard. That's happened 3-4 times in NFL history. So that's not going to be consistent goal that you can produce. The pass rush through the first two games is not good. Period. You compare it against anything. Compare it against an average pass rush. So if you look at it individually, Bryce Huff's not producing, Jalen Carter's not producing. Those are supposed to be your core members of the pass rush, and they're not producing. Can they produce? Yeah, they're going to get better. In the case of Carter, I think it's even a bigger deal. I know everyone's ultra focused on Huff because he's the free agent signing, and they paid him $51 million, and it's very important he gets going. But I think it's even more important for Carter because he's the guy they're building the foundation of this defense on, and he's getting and I apologize for the wind. It's getting windy here at the NovaCare complex, but he's the guy you're building this defense on, and he's playing poorly, and he's not producing. And if he doesn't come around, then you got some real issues. So it's only 2 games. It's a very small sample size. I don't think it's time to jump off the bridges around the city. I think they're going to get better. Are they going to get better to the point where they're good enough? I don't know if they have the talent to do that.
Yeah.
This year.
I would agree with that. And, to me, you look at some of the things that happen. Okay, like if I say, John, you lost a game, you gave up 15 points up to the last minute of that game. Is that game different if I have A.J. Brown? Likely. So I don't look at that game and say, man, I'm not what my goals are and what I want to be based on that night. But there are some things from that night that I think you do have to say, can I get a better pass rush? Maybe another area that you might look at and say, all right, am I good enough in the secondary? What did you think of the secondary in the game? And then you say, okay, are we good enough there? Are we good enough in that spot that we can get to where we want to get?
Well, I don't think you're good enough to have the secondary carry you. So, I think everybody looked at this defense and understood that the strength was supposed to be the defensive front. So to assume that the defensive front is going to underachieve and the secondary is going to make up for it, I don't think that's going to happen. So you're still hanging your hat, and Josh Sweat's got to get better. Jordan Davis has got to get better. Obviously Huff and Carter, but no, to assume that the secondary is going to carry those guys, I would be stunned if that develops. It's more likely they're going to be a bottom 5 defense again.
Wow.
As you sit through the growing pains of if the defensive front doesn't produce.
On your show this morning, you mentioned the word grow, all right? That was a word that stuck out to me. Where can this defense grow to, in your mind?
Well, I do think people forget how young Jalen Carter is, maybe emphasized by the fact that he was essentially punished for being late to some kind of team responsibility and didn't start the game. So you got some maturity issues there, still a young player. Nolan Smith, still a very young player. Bryce Huff trying to grow into an expanded role and still a young player. There's a lot of room for growth in that aspect of it from these young players. And I think when you lose a Fletcher Cox, everybody's like, oh, you're losing Fletcher. Who cares? Because he started downgrading. Well, I think you now see the reason why people care and people made a big deal about it. So there's room for growth with a very young defensive front. And then there's room for growth in the secondary with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. But you are going to have those startup costs, which happen every time you play young players, no matter how talented they are. And now I got a Mack truck going by. We got all kinds of activity here at the NovaCare complex. But you have all this young talent, and eventually, it starts clicking. You saw it with Kansas City with the defensive backfield. Man, they struggled a lot when they played their young defensive backs 2 years ago. And by the end of the season, they were all contributing to a Super Bowl championship. That was the hope here with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean early. And maybe it gets to that point, but you're going to have a lot of hiccups en route to that point.
John McMullen, Birds 365, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. The Eagles obviously lose in a game that has been second-guessed up and down. They'll move forward to take on this Saints team. What do they need to try to grow? Because they're most likely not going to have A.J. Brown. What offensively can they take and try to use without A.J. Brown moving forward?
Well, I think you got to go back to sort of how they played, but they'll be a little bit better off because even though Nick has downplayed it, the fact that, typically it was a Monday game. So, the game plan was installed Wednesday, and then A.J. got hurt on Friday. So you got to revamp things. This time, at least, they'll be game planning with the knowledge that they're not going to have A.J. Brown, and you don't have to tweak it so that from that standpoint. So hopefully you can get Dallas Goedert a little bit more involved, a little bit earlier to complement Devontae Smith. Maybe John Dotson gets incrementally better as he learns more of the offense and gets more comfortable. Maybe that becomes a bigger thing. But I think you got to lean on Saquon Barkley first coming off that game. And I don't think it's going to affect him dramatically, that big drop. He's been around long enough to understand these types of things can happen. So I think you still have to lean on him. But if you look at the opponent, I mean, if New Orleans continues to play like they're playing, which is kind of difficult, to be honest, but they're a high-powered offense. And if this turns into a shootout game, I think the Eagles are capable of winning shootouts when A.J. Brown is out there. I don't know if they're capable of winning a shootout without A.J. Brown.
Yeah. I think without A.J. Brown, the offense obviously, I don't know, you lean on Barkley more and see what happens there. But real quick, before we roll out, I know we got practice coming up here. Looking back at Jalen Hurts in that last play, what is your, you had a day to kind of think about it and all that kind of stuff, Does that concern you moving forward, the way that last play kind of went down? That these turnovers, we talked about it Friday. Is he going to throw an interception? He played very, very well up until that moment. But when you look at that last play, what does that last play kind of say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I thought it was a bad decision. I've heard some people call it hero ball. Like I don't think it was like Seattle last year, which I often point to. To me, that's classic hero football, where you're trying to go off script and trying to do something you're not supposed to do to go win the game. I just thought he saw Devontae Smith flash and he made a bad throw. And if you think about where you are in that game, doesn't sound like a lot, but 27 seconds and one timeout, and you only need about 15 yards to at least get Jake Elliott to a point where he has a chance to make a game-winning field goal. You gotta be a little bit more cautious there. If it's wide open and you can make the throw, of course you take it. But he wasn't close to making the throw. Jesse Bates came over, intercepted it, won Defensive Player of the Week because of it. So I didn't like the decision, but I don't think it was quite as egregious as some have spun it to be. But he should have been a better prepared, or should have had a better understanding that he had probably 3 more tries. To try to get that 14, 15 yards. I believe. Was that a first down, Mike? I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, because they had gotten the first down on the pass the play before.
Yeah, so you got second down, you got third down, and worst case scenario, you got fourth down, which you would need to get the first down to kick the field goal.
And they had a timeout left.
And they had the timeout, so you had plenty of opportunities. So I didn't like the decision making, but I don't think the people that called it hero football, I think they went a little bit too far.
Well, I'll tell you what, moving forward, and it's one of those things, like now he's got 6 straight games with the interception. You're hoping that, as we talked on Friday, doesn't, that decision there, because again, you had the timeout, you had time, you have a kicker that can make that kick, and you're just hoping that that's not something, because as you're looking forward of things offensively, if you don't have A.J. Brown, it almost like you have to be almost perfect now without A.J.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a situation where a lot of people thought they would have the best offense in the NFL, and you're in week 3 and you're already worried about controlling clock and maybe shortening the game.
Jeez.
That's the difference.
Well, we said it all offseason, John. The two guys that you couldn't lose were Smith or Brown, and now you've lost one of them, and who knows for how long.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll probably be a couple weeks as long as you're cautious with it. That he should be able to be back. So, but the NFL has a way of exposing your flaws. And the A.J. Brown injury exposed the Eagles' flaws pretty quickly.
That's this Sunday. Of course, the Eagles go to a 1 o'clock Sunday game. They'll have a little run of 1 o'clock Sunday games coming up with New Orleans. Very tough place to play. Tampa Bay, and then the bye, and then Cleveland and the Giants. So they got 4 straight 1 o'clock games coming up. The old
Nirvana. 1 o'clock Sunday is football Nirvana.
Yeah, the old 1 o'clock game. Remember those? All right, John McMullen, Birds 365. Check him out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, John's back tomorrow on the Sports Bash. The coordinators will talk. We'll hear what Vic Fangio has to say about his defense's effort down the final stretch. That's the one thing, is the coordinators, they don't talk until way down in the week, Thursday. But those questions are going to come to Vic. Hey, what about the pass rush? What do you think can be, done about that? I got the answer for Vic. Not much. I don't think there's a lot of pass rush in that locker room that can help this team out. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate. But I think that's going to be something we're going to be talking about a lot. They're going to have to get creative and find ways to get pass rush, and he does not want to blitz. He doesn't want to have to blitz. So this is going to be an interesting conundrum all season long. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SBLive. We got so much more coming up, including Scott Grayson's grades. What grades did he have for Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, the defense, Vic Fangio? All that is coming up next with Scott Grayson from Fox 29, Grayson's grades. Jeff Mosher has football at 4. Jeff Kerr tonight at 5 o'clock. And, of course, my NFL Fine 5, Ugly 5. John McMullen brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Shop their lineup of new, pre-owned, and certified pre-owned Hondas online at boardwalkhonda.com. Coming back with Scott Grayson. Grayson's grades. They're next here on the Sports Bash.
You're listening to the
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
328, Grayson's grades are brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call. 4 convenient locations to serve you. And at gmslaw.com. I'm Mike Gill. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Scott Grayson's grades, they're over at 97.3ESPN.com. After every Eagles game, you can check out his report card on the Eagles and how they fared. Let's get it to him now. You can check him out on Fox 29 and, of course, at 97.3ESPN.com. Grayson's grades are in. Professor Grayson, what's up, my friend?
Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
Well, ugly Monday nighter. We needed an extra day to kind of take a look back at the report card here, and we'll walk to the mailbox and pick up that recorder. I guess they don't mail the report card to you anymore. You can just simply go to your phone and get it. But if I go right now to 97.3ESPN.com, I got a couple left, and you're going to the head coach and the defensive coordinator, the first 2 Fs of 3. So let's start. You're blaming the coaching.
Yeah, I just found it just to be egregious what happened at the end of that game. And here's where I know Nick Sirianni's not calling the plays, right? I've heard some people saying you can't blame him. It wasn't him that called the play. listen, as CEO, you have the right and the ability, unless I'm wrong, to go over to Kellen Moore and go, no matter what, this ball does not go in the air. Or what I didn't understand was if you're going to throw it on third down, are you not saying at that point that the priority is to get the first down and win the game? So why wouldn't you then go for it on fourth down? You're up by 3. Really going up by 6 did not, in my opinion, help anything. I understand the mathematics of it, that 6 is better than 3, and they need a touchdown to beat you. But if you're putting a priority on getting that first down, if you don't get it, they're starting from like the 10 instead of the 30. They have to go 90 yards to beat you. Granted, I understand a field goal would force overtime. But if you believe you have the better team or the better offense or whatever it may be at that point, that you are going for it on those 2 downs, then you're fine with that. And I to me, the 40 seconds, I mean, there's just a lot to unpack there that I just found to be, and then it was puzzling, Mike, just the whole, in terms of Sirianni, the idea of going for it on fourth down in the first quarter when you have the better team. At least that's the way I went into it, thinking they were the better team. You take the 3 points at home to just start building the lead, and then you go from there and you see where the game dictates and takes you. Because that's a no-brainer. You're up by 6, now you kick the 3, you make it a 2-possession game, and fine. And I know there's a lot of football that would have been played before that. In terms of Vic Fangio, and this is where I also kind of link it to Sirianni, the Eagles had 2 timeouts left at that point. As the Falcons were marching down the field in 4 plays, they went from the 30 to the other 12. It was crazy.
Well, that's where
I know you.
That's where Scott. That's where there's a lot that you brought up there. That's where if you ran the ball on 3rd and 3, I don't know what your feelings were on that play, but a lot of people wanted him to run the ball, which isn't Sirianni calling the play, but, I guess somewhere in the hierarchy he could say we want to run the ball here, call a running play. They throw the ball. But if they run the ball and get stopped, they do not get the first down. 40 seconds comes off the clock, yes. But your point is interesting because, all right, 40 seconds comes off the clock and you kick the field goal at that point. Atlanta still had plenty of time to do what they did anyway, in hindsight, correct?
Correct, which is why my thought was if you're going to throw it on 3rd down, which I don't have a problem with throwing it on 3rd down as long as you then are trying to go for it on 4th down, because you've now told me, right, what I read from that was we don't trust our defense enough. We want to win the game by crossing the first down marker one way or another. So, and I've heard this too, right? If Saquon catches that ball, we're not breaking Sirianni over the stones here, and we're not – then we're all, what a great call, all that, fine. But why do you throw that ball if you're just going to kick the field goal at that point? And to me, that was we're selling out to get this first down. And if we don't get it, again.
So wait, you wanted them to go for it on 4th, is what you're saying?
I am, yes. I thought you should have gone. But see, that's because you've told me as a head coach, we want to win the game by getting a first down. We don't even want them to get the ball back.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that message is inconsistent if we're going to throw it on 3rd down and then kick the field goal.
Yeah, but the play that they ran, doesn't that say we want to get the first down and end this thing, and if we don't get it, we're fine? This all goes back to see, I said this yesterday. I don't see what if you disagree, feel free to tell me. We're essentially criticizing Sirianni and the coaching staff for having trust in the players. Shame on them for trusting their guys. Because and Sirianni was asked about this on Monday night. Hey, is there a mechanism in which if the play's not there, just to throw it away? And he says, yeah, of course. The play was wide open, and then they win the game. But because they don't, okay, we'll take the 3 because we've only given up 15 points all night. You're going to have to go all the way down the field and score a touchdown on us. That's a lot different than kicking a field goal where in today's game, you really only need to get to the 45-yard line and a team can kick a field goal.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I do think that that's why there's so much blame to go around on this, and the players are not absolved from it. I mean, and I know Saquon came right out and said, "I got to catch that ball." He's right. I mean, he does. It was a well thrown ball by Jalen. It was right where it needed to be, and as you watch it, you can see Saquon's eyes start turning the corner a little bit before he caught it. Yes, the player has to make the play, but I'm going again at the scratch in my head at the whole idea of. But see, Mike, I'm going from if you go my way, right, and you say, we're going to try to get the first down on fourth down because we tried to get it on third, and if you don't get it, they now are starting at the 10, and they will have less time on the clock, presumably, granted not as much, but they just need a field goal to tie the game. But that means you go to overtime where you're guaranteed to get another possession. You follow what I'm saying? And they're starting from the 10. I mean, well, you're not guaranteed to get another possession if the Falcons were to score a touchdown with the first touch. Understood. But you're at home. You've got the crowd behind you. You're trying to – and, again, the message that Nick Sirianni sent to me was, we want the first down and we want to end the game that way. So then go get the first down on fourth down. You went for it on fourth down in the first quarter.
Yeah, that part of it, I do see. You're basically saying, look, you were aggressive on third down. Why not just stay aggressive and go for it on fourth?
Yes.
I can see that way of thinking, but I really, to me, if you wanted to be aggressive, you run the ball on third, let the clock run down 40 seconds, and then go for it on fourth and pull that pass play out because the clock's going to stop anyway on the turnover on downs. So if you think that play is the home run play, run it on fourth down. And if you don't get it, okay, now your situation comes in where, all right, you're going to have to go about 90 yards to score. That's the problem.
To win the game. To win the game.
Well, you don't have to go 90. You only have to go about 45 because you can kick a field goal to tie the game. Yes.
Correct, but I agree with that thought that if you're going to run that play, run it on fourth down. Here's the other thing, Mike, that I don't think a lot of people have thought about. If you look at that game and the way what the Eagles had done, especially in the second half, they flashed it up on the screen too. The time of possession was so lopsided in the second half. The Eagles had gone on some really long drives. You had a tired defense out there for the Falcons, and I know they put a bunch of guys in the box. But you're telling me with that offensive line and a tired defense opposing you and Saquon Barkley with the ball. See, I'm against passing it on third down there from the beginning. I would have just gone at these guys. And no matter what, even if Saquon gets 1 yard or a yard and a half, you can go with the tush-push and most likely move the chains at that point too. I would have preferred to do that back-to-back, those kind of things, than to throw the ball on third down. I agree with you said. If you like that play a lot, and it was there, you run that on fourth down, and if you throw the ball, it's incomplete. It's a turnover on downs anyway. The clock would stop.
Yeah. You gave Fangio an F as well. I mean, that's a tough one, buddy. Listen, they gave up 15 points. There was a minute left in that game and 15 points. Now, I get it, the last drive. So are you heavily curving that last drive? Because if I'm a defensive coordinator and I gave up 15 points with a minute left in the game, I feel like we should win that game.
Well, yeah, they should have. But so yes, I am curving to an extent off of that last drive because, listen, at some point you've got to get out of that defense. And that's where I say, I know the Eagles didn't want to stop the clock. And if you wait until they get down to the 12 and then take a timeout, at some point, they had to reset that defense. The Falcons were just staying up there and staying on the ball and running with tempo. The Eagles couldn't substitute anybody. They couldn't really try to get out of it because they didn't have time to. That defense was egregious. It left so many holes that in a zone that they just picked apart to go down the field. And because the Eagles were never able to get out of it, it just was right there. And Slay surely had to play better on that final play, but in terms of Fangio, in terms of the whole game, what bothered me too, Mike, is this was the second week in a row there just wasn't a pass rush at all. And there's not even, I was looking for stunts. I was looking for blitzes in some way. I feel like it's the same old broken record that's kind of been here in the past, which is you have to generate a pass rush somehow. You have a statue at quarterback back there. You have got to make him move, and that's when he'll make mistakes throwing the ball. And they never did that. They were never able to do that. They didn't try to do something different with their rush or bring an extra man. So in terms of that, I blame Vic Fangio for. You got to find a way to call something, at least call something different to get there. And I know you're right, 15 points in the 58 and a half minutes of the game up to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But can't lose that game, and I blamed a lot of people for it.
That said, you gave the defensive line an F, and that one I think I can jump on board with you. This defensive line doesn't only get an F for last night. I'm worried about them being in the F and D category a lot during Grayson's grades.
Yeah, the first week was okay. There was some slipping going on, and I'm willing to say I got to see these guys in week 2 to really feel like I get a better understanding of what they're going to do or what they're capable of. I'm concerned, Mike. I am. I just don't see, what the Falcons did with Jalen Carter was minimized him. Jordan Davis isn't getting a rush. Bryce Huff has been, I don't know, he's probably on a milk carton somewhere. And Nolan Smith is, also not able to really get by anywhere. Brandon Graham, of course, with his age, you can't expect him to try to get back there too much. But it's just whatever they're doing is not working. And they've got to find a way to – that's why I'm saying you got to run some stunts. You got to do something different. Because, look, Derek Carr, he's more mobile than Kirk Cousins was. But he's not exactly, a Patrick Mahomes out there or somebody, Lamar Jackson, you got to worry about sprinting away from you. So – I just think got to do something, and that defensive line needs help. And that's where you look at it and you go, when the Eagles have been in situations like this before, or something like this, Howie will go out and make a trade. And I just am wondering where Howie is in all this as he watches this and thinks, man, I may need to go get these guys another player.
I agree with that comment, too, and I talked about this the other day, Scott. I just don't know where in season you get pass rush because everybody's looking for pass rush. It's hard to find it in season. Scott Grayson's grades are up at 97.3ESPN.com. He gave out a D, and that was to Kellen Moore. No A.J. Brown. Another tough grader. I like it this week, Scott.
Mike, I turned off that game and was like, I cannot believe what I just saw. And I just was like, listen, you got to hold people accountable here. And Kellen Moore, look, I like Britton Covey. I just don't know that I like Britton Covey to get 6 receptions in a game when you have a Dallas Goedert out there. And Devontae kind of got his. Jahan Dotson I expected to pick up some of the load. He really didn't get all that many touches. And then you're running Saquon Barkley 9 yards a clip early on in that game, and you get away from that a little bit. There's just things I didn't understand. It just, and they kind of had an idea. They had a couple days, he had a couple days to tweak that game plan and figure out some things. And that's where you go down to it and you wonder, all right, are the quarterback and the offensive coordinator on the same page? I know this is just week 2, game 2 for both of them together, so there's probably still some growing pains that have to go through there. But, this is 2 weeks now, Mike. I'm just baffled. Where is the Saquon Barkley screen pass? I just don't understand
so
why you don't get that.
You have confidence he's going to. You have confidence he's going to catch that. Then apparently.
Well, I have full confidence he's going to look. I like the play call on 4th down. We talked about that. Saquon will not drop another pass like that all year. I am almost certain of it. A guy with his talent and his ability is not going to let that mistake happen twice. But yeah, give me where is that screen pass? I don't, and this whole stuff of, ineligible receivers downfield. It's like, come on now.
Yeah, that's happened too many times.
Have to be addressed. That's what training camp's for. You have officials at training camp who are there to make sure these guys are understanding where the line, supposed gray line is on rules. That stuff can't be happening at the percentage that it's happening here with these guys in this offensive line. And Kellen Moore, that's partly your job, man. You got to control that.
Well, it's interesting. By the way, you gave Thomas Booker a B. I said yesterday he was the best player on the field. He only played 9 plays, but he was the one guy whose name, and you saw him flying all over the place. They need to figure out a way to get him on the field more. But I will say this: you gave Covey an A, and you just ripped Moore for throwing the ball 6 times.
Well, I mean, look, I can't rip Covey for catching the ball when it's thrown. I mean, what is the alternative? Don't catch the ball. I mean, and here's the thing. He made some tough catches in traffic. I thought, when you look at his catches and the yardage, they obviously were not for big plays. So he was sticking close to the line of scrimmage, but making the catches to help move the chains. And I understand that part of the game may have dictated they go there. But I did not understand him getting that many targets. And again, Mike, we talked to him out at the Super Bowl. I've talked to him multiple times. Great guy, great personality. You love talking to the guy. You want him to find nothing but success. But I mean, so I had to give him the A for making the catches, because the alternative is don't catch the ball, which is that would be bad. But I don't have to like the fact that they went to him like they did on those plays. Like, again, Dallas Goedert's out there. I work him to death over the middle. I don't understand some of what went on there, and that's where I blame Kellen Moore for that. I'm not going to blame Covey for having the ball thrown his way and making the catch.
All right, Scott Grayson's grades. The full grades are up over at 973ESPN.com. Check out all the grades after every Eagles game and right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Scott, he's heading to practice right now, and you can check out more of him on Fox 29 and, of course, here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Scott.
All right, thanks as always, Mike.
All right, the grades are up. You can check them out, 97.3 ESPN.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, and coming up, it is my Find 5 Ugly 5. 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL after 2 weeks. This might be the most difficult Find 5 Ugly 5 that I've ever had to put together. Find out my Find 5 and my Ugly 5. That's coming up next here on the Sports Bash. This hour is brought to you by Broadley's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call them 609-390-3907. Online at broadleys.net. More Sports Bash coming up.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer. For thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, Find 5 Ugly 5. 5 best, 5 worst teams brought to you by Jenkins & Sons Plumbing and Heating for heating and air conditioning installation service and maintenance, plumbing or drain cleaning service. 609-641-6262. Online, jenkinsandsons.com. Josh, I've been doing Find 5 Ugly 5 for as long as I can remember. This might have been the most difficult 5 to find on both sides.
I mean, it's pretty tough to figure out deciphering after just 2 weeks.
Ugly 5, number 5. New England, excuse me. New England.
Like, wait, what?
Maybe New England's better than we give them credit for. I think at the end of the year, this is about where they should be, somewhere in the Ugly 5. They're playing over their heads. Number 4, Washington. I know Washington won, but they beat my number 3, the Giants.
All right.
Number 2 is Denver. Denver stinks. Bo Nix stinks. Thankfully. I thought he was going to stink, and I'm right about that. And Carolina is number 1.
I say you're missing the Colts and the Jags.
I'm going to give both those teams that. I don't like the quarterback for the Colts at all, but I do like the rest of their team. All right?
All right.
Number 5 in the Find 5. Number 5, New Orleans. They went from the Ugly 5-5 to the Find 5-5.
Derek Carr's looking pretty good.
Their offense is pretty damn good. I watch a lot of their offensive play design. They do a lot of cool things. Buffalo's number 4. I can't believe I'm putting Buffalo right there right now. But for week 2, they're there. They deserve it.
They do.
San Francisco is 3. They got some injury problems, though.
A lot of injury problems.
Houston is number 2. And Kansas City's number 1.
We have the same 5. I just have a different order.
Really?
Yeah.
You put New Orleans in your 5 last week. You told me that I was an idiot for not putting them in the uglies.
And I said I was wrong.
That's a big jump, though. I at least took them out of the uglies last week. I don't know that any team's ever gone from ugly to fine. I don't know that's ever happened.
But they have.
Fine 5, Ugly 5, brought to you by Jenkins & Sons Plumbing and Heating. For heating and air conditioning, installation, service, and maintenance, plumbing, or drain cleaning service, give them a call, 609-641-6262, online, jenkinsandsons.com. Coming up, football at 4 with Jeff Mosher. We'll get his thoughts on Nick Sirianni's comments from today, and should have Nick Sirianni addressed the team? He had Jalen Hurts do it. I don't say he had him. It's not like he had, like a leg breaker make him do it. But he acquiesced to Jalen Hurts. Is he okay with that? We'll ask Moshe coming up next for Wednesday's edition of Football at 4 on the Sports Bash.
97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. The fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Jeff Mosher is here today from the Inside the Birds podcast. InsideTheBirds.com, and you can check out their podcast on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds. We're going to get to Moshe in just a couple of minutes here. He's got a little something that's going to cause him to be a couple minutes late, but he will be here for Inside the Birds Football at 4. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. A lot of text messages coming in. Rick and EHT, the analytic department is making the decisions, and the coordinators are calling the plays. What does Sirianni do? That is like one of the dumbest questions, period. Like, what does Sirianni do? Mike Tomlin doesn't call plays. John Harbaugh doesn't call plays. There's a ton of coaches in this league that don't call plays. Like, what year do we think this is that the coach is calling all the plays and doing everything? What does calling the plays? There was a time where Doug Peterson called the plays, and then people complained. He needs to give up the play calling because it's too much on his plate. The CEO, head coach, is the guy who makes the decisions, and I feel like fans have a really hard time with somebody being, we have this thought that the coach does everything and that the assistants are just a waste and they do nothing. The head coach is, and we, I guess, just don't put enough emphasis as fans. We just don't care enough about culture. And, do the players want to play for you? Do the players like playing for the head coach? He doesn't call the plays. He doesn't, do what I think you perceive the head coach of a football team does. I think back in the day, I don't know how old you are, Rich, but my intuition was you're an older gentleman, and I say older, I'm 47. When I grew up, you didn't know the coordinator's name. You had no idea who the coordinator was. You didn't know who the defensive coordinator was. You didn't know who the offensive coordinator was. You just knew who the head coach was. And I feel like a lot of people still feel like it's the same, where the head coach just does everything. He calls the play. Yeah. He calls the offense. He calls the defense. He's the special teams coach. He does everything. You just blame him for everything. Like that question to me, what does the head coach do? Well, I think it's quite apparent that the head coach is the guy who makes these decisions. We're going to go for it on 4th down. We're not going to go for it on 4th down. We're going to punt. We're not going to punt. There's a lot of game planning leading up to the game. You said a team needs a leader as a head coach. Not a bunch of guys with calculators telling you what to do. Then, Rick, you need to just find a new sport. If you don't like the way the game is going, that's the way the game's going. The analytics are a part of the game. We can all say we don't like it. That's never going away. But I think what Nick Sirianni is, if anything, is a guy that these players like playing for and the leader of the football team. He sets the culture of the team that, oh, by the way, Rick went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So evidently he does something right. Let's get into it. Jeff Mosher is here. He spoke today, and he really broke down a lot of decisions, and he threw analytics out there, and the charts say this. And, of course, the text messages coming in are really going after that way of thought. What does Sirianni do? If the charts are telling him what to do, what does he do? Are we already 2 weeks into the season, Jeff, questioning what Nick Sirianni's role on this team is?
I'm not questioning his role on the team. I think, there are plenty of CEO head coaches who do a whole lot of things and make those big decisions during the game that he does. That's what a head coach's job is. I think there's a fair question to the way he uses analytics. And it's a big argument within the sports community itself, Mike, you know this. But, the hardcore analytics people will tell you that you're either abiding by what the analytics say because mathematically that's your best advantage, or you're just not. And if you're trying to mix gut with analytics, you're actually doing a disservice to your decision making, because the analytics is designed to take the guesswork out and the gut out of the decision, so that more often than not, you're going to succeed because you're going the way the analytics tell you to do it. You're not going to always succeed, but more often than not. Whereas with gut, it's a 50-50 proposition each time. So when you look at the game, Mike, I think you can question why he would be aggressive in some cases and passive in others. You were aggressive on 3rd and 3 and you threw a ball when you could have ran. Then on 4th and 3, you kicked a field goal. On your opening drive, you get into a 4th down situation where you don't take the points, you are aggressive and go for it. So why did you kick the field goal later in the game, at the end of the game, when you didn't get it on 3rd and 3? So he has tended to gravitate both ways as a head coach, where sometimes he's pushing the analytics button, sometimes he's pushing the gut button. It's not that he's unprepared. He told you that he looks at his own, he makes up his own chart and he has his own statistics that tell him what to do. But if you look at I look at the 2017 Super Bowl team, Mike, it just felt like Doug was going to push the pedal on the analytics every single time, right? And the players said that year that his aggression, especially on 4th down and 2-point conversions, it galvanized them. They felt confident that when they got into a situation, they could get it because their head coach showed a lot of confidence in them. And I don't think Sirianni helps that by being sometimes really aggressive and sometimes not. I think you got to either be one way or the other for most of the time. Now, every once in a while, there's a situation where maybe it's just you got to know your quarterback, your running back, your defense, right? You can't like completely go it and just ignore all the other context. But I think Doug Peterson's aggression and going with what the analytics said in 2017 was a big reason why the Eagles won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and for the most part, Nick's been pretty aggressive. They went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago in part because they took chances and they were aggressive. He really went through the whole thought process today about why and how and all it's done, and I wouldn't go back and change anything. But a lot of that was predicated, Moshe, on why he kicked the field goal as opposed to going for it on 4th down. Do you think that is a bigger decision than why throw over pass on 3rd down?
Yes, I do. Well, I mean, I certainly think that they're equally weighted, if not a bigger decision. And to your point, I think people are so fixated on that, on the Barkley drop, and not the decision to then kick the field goal versus going for it there, that they haven't really thought about why he was more passive in that scenario, whereas he was more aggressive earlier in the game.
Yeah, because earlier in the game, I guess, was it 4th down and 4? They ended up going for it. They did not get it, and that's right. And the ESPN...
You should never, right, you should never let that kind of context, unless you just thought you were unprepared, right? You shouldn't let not getting it influence your decision the next time around.
Right, but and they didn't get it, and though the analytics, according to ESPN that night, they pointed it out, said they're doing the right thing. They're going for it on 4th down. Now, I don't know why the analytics would suggest go for it on 4th down and 4 at that moment. I don't know how the analytics even come up with that data to say you should go for it in this spot. That's where I think it's a little weird that you would rely on the analytics in that moment, because where's the data coming from?
Well, I mean, that is an argument against sort of the analytics, is that the data it takes into account every single scenario, which many of them lack their own context. Is the sample size full of a bunch of people going for it with backup quarterbacks because constantly quarterbacks are hurt in this league compared to starting quarterbacks? There's a ton of variables that go into creating these numbers. And so that's why I say you either abide by it or you don't. Trying to weave in between both it's going to yield the same result, where sometimes you're going to be right, sometimes you're going to be wrong, instead of most times one way or the other.
All right, Moshe, obviously there's a lot that continues to kind of just, everybody's on this play and everything's on the field goal, and he talked a lot about it today. But I want to kind of get into the things that happened in that game that we're worried about, that we think are going to be a problem now through 2 weeks. And I think at the top of that list has to be your pass rush, correct? Would you say after 2 weeks now, all right, week 1, weird field, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. After week 2 of seeing this pass rush, is this going to be a problem?
Well, that's a great question. I think a pass rush can only really kick in when you have the offense in behind the sticks or in unmanageable 3rd downs. That's when you really need your pass rush to come in. It's hard to rush the passer when they're getting rid of the ball quickly, or when they've got you working off play action a whole lot and you have to play the run first, which is what the Falcons did. And they did that, Mike, because they ran the ball not just effectively, but prolifically, right? So for the second straight week, the Eagles got absolutely gashed and shredded between the 20s in run defense. So while we can sit here and talk for 20 minutes on all the pass rushers and all the issues that they're having getting to the quarterback, it's got to start with the run defense and putting the offense in unfavorable situations.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, I'm not asking them to have 70 sacks like they did a couple of years ago, but do you see any evidence that that this pass rush can be better? In other words, like, hey, Bryce Huff, you signed him for $51 million. Yeah, he's off to a slow start, but I do think that he'll get going. Nolan Smith hasn't done anything. He was a first-round pick, but I do think he will be able to get going. Do you feel that way about those two particular players?
Well, that's a 2-part question. No, there's zero evidence after 2 games that you would say Nolan Smith or Bryce Huff or Josh Sweat are going to really suddenly pick up the pace and do it there, do better. But you know how football is. You know the ebb and flows of the game. You know things can change. Schemes can change. Alignments can change. Players can get put in better positions. If you go back to Jonathan Gannon's first year, do you remember how bad the Eagles were? Defensive. Remember that Kansas City game where they didn't have a dime package to match up? I mean, the Eagles were giving up a historical amount of yards or even last year. Go take the Denver Broncos. They gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins in week 2 or week 3? And they were one of the worst defenses historically that you would ever see. And it would have been very easy to say the Broncos will be the worst defense in the NFL all year long because there's no evidence to suggest that they know how to play defense.
Yeah.
By the end of the year, they were, I think, like in the last 8 weeks, they played like a top 10.
Well,
defense,
and
right?
that's what I'm kind of looking at here. Is there evidence that, okay, they didn't? Because I said earlier, look, you only gave up 15 points into the last drive of the game. So, I mean, you weren't horrendous. It's not like you lost the game by giving up 35 points. You had 15 points on the board with a minute left in that game. So there's something to kind of build on. But, man, against teams higher, I guess the thing is, if you're watching that team and that defense, are you saying, man, I can trust that defense can get a stop in a big moment?
Well, at this moment, no. And going into New Orleans, which has scored about 3 million points in the first 2 weeks, I'm sure everybody is thinking the worst. But I've said this on the podcast this morning, Adam and I talked about it. I'm not doom and gloom. Looking at this as the coaches, the veteran coaches, by the way, who many of them are very good, have very good reputations, are learning their players. The players are learning their coaches. We've seen this happen. I mentioned with Jonathan Gannon a couple of years ago, a new scheme. Remember how Fletcher Cox is playing this 4-eye? He can't stop the run. The Eagles, I mean, I do believe my evidence is the success that these coaches have had and individually some of these players have had before to say that they will figure some things out here.
Okay, how much of the disappointment then behind the guy that I think they were really counting on is Jalen Carter? I know that we all think that he's a player and he's something, but do you have legitimate concerns that might be an issue?
I do think that I have concerns about Carter and Jordan Davis. I mean, Jordan Davis, we're on year 3 here, and we're waiting for him to make a way bigger impact. And, yeah, Jalen Carter, I thought, I know people say, like, well, he's constantly double-teamed. So is Aaron Donald. So is Fletcher Cox. So is Dexter Lawrence. Like, that's not an excuse to not be a productive player. And he hasn't been productive enough for the first 2 weeks. He had some really bad penalties in the opener. And obviously Jeff McLean from the Inquirer reported he was late to a meeting. So we know this guy's a little bit of a history of not always having his head on straight. And now you've seen him not be productive. So, yeah, I think that there's fair concern for both of those guys. The interior of this defensive line.
Yes, and from the interior, it's really the anchor of your run defense. Give me some thoughts on that, because that was one of the problems the other night was they got gashed on the ground throughout the night.
Yeah, so you're going to see it again with New Orleans because they run a very similar with Clint Kubiak there. This West Coast scheme that is a heavy outside zone run team. And what I mean by outside or wide zone is, and it's pretty easy to see when you're watching TV, the offensive linemen don't block you straight up the field. They either go horizontally to the right or horizontally to the left. It's the old Mike Shanahan style of run blocking, right? And as a defensive lineman, your job is to not sort of get caught up in that and run with them. Your job is to penetrate. You're not jump the gap, but push those guys back and not make it easy for you to take you to the left or take you to the right. And I just thought in general, I saw it. The defensive line got taken for a ride. And that you can look at the tape and say, my God, Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond were terrible. But honestly, they had 320 to 340 pound people in their face constantly because the defensive line didn't hold up its end of the bargain. No, there are very few linebackers in this league that can really make a dent or get their money's worth when they have that many offensive linemen in their face. So I don't put it on them or the secondary tackling as much as the defensive line not being able to control the line of scrimmage.
Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, Football at 4. The Eagles today, Nick Sirianni speaking. There was some, Sirianni, I guess, confirmed that he did not address the team after the game and that it was Jalen Hurts was the one. Do you have a problem with the head coach not addressing his team after a loss like that?
It's certainly something I've never heard of before. I mean, almost... I'll have to look into this some more, but I'm every time you see it on video now, way more than you ever did like in the 90s or early 2000s. A coach comes in and yes, so I have seen players talk first or celebrations happen after big wins, but I've never heard of a coach just not addressing the team, but I may not have asked around enough on that.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, does he mean like he wasn't even in the locker room? He didn't go in and just, it's a weird thing, but like, I can see if Jalen Hurts says, Coach, let me talk to the guys. I made that throw. I let us down. I mean, if Saquon Barkley was the guy that said, Coach, let me talk. Because those two, I think the Hurts finality and the Barkley drop probably to the players stand out the most in terms of I need to address this. Because talking to Colin Thompson yesterday, he said as a player, he wasn't surprised with that play at all. The players expect a play like that to kind of really rip your heart out and just kind of put your – so the players aren't surprised by that play call, do you think, right?
No, I don't think that they were surprised at all. And I would think that if you polled most of them, they'd be pretty excited about it. Players like to be aggressive. That's why I brought up the 2017 team. They loved that Doug Peterson was so aggressive on fourth down, so aggressive going for 2 after touchdowns in certain situations. And it doesn't surprise – I don't think that they were shocked at all that Nick Sirianni, who, like you mentioned, has been aggressive throughout his career, was looking to go for the jugular there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't know. I have to find out more about whether or not Nick just did he wait or did he not talk at all? Probably pretty good though for Hurts to, as a leader of the team, to do that. Particularly coming off a game where despite what people are saying, he wasn't very good. So, I mean, at least to take his accountability was good.
609-403-0973. A lot of text messages here coming in. We'll continue to read these out throughout the day for everybody. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, you can check that out on all podcasting platforms. The Eagles will take on the New Orleans Saints. You won't be back on the rest of the week, Mo, so let's get a thought on the Saints from you. It's funny. We do Find Five, Ugly Five. I had the Saints in my Ugly Five to start the year. I don't know that a team's ever gone from the Ugly Five to the Fine Five, but you might have to make a good argument that they're one of the best 5 teams in the league through 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at the bright side from an Eagles standpoint, the one thing you could probably say is, well, averaging 43 points per game, scoring touchdowns on 10 straight possessions, that's fairly unsustainable in the NFL. So maybe, you could look at it as saying they're walking into a buzzsaw, or you could say the Saints and Derek Carr especially are really not that good. And they've happened to face a terrible Panthers team and maybe shell-shocked the Cowboys a little bit. Like they're doing sort of what Kirk Cousins did to the Eagles in that they're working off great play action. Clint Kubiak has installed the same type of offense we just talked about. A lot of tight ends, fullbacks, motion, running the ball between the tackles, which Alvin Kamara is doing a really good job of. And then just that's helped them set up really opportune pass plays to Chris Olave and really Rashid Shaheed. I thought Olave was going to benefit more from this scheme, but right now it's been Rashid Shaheed with that speed who's been able to benefit more. So, yeah, that's what the Eagles have to worry about. And then defensively, here's what you got to worry about. The Saints are always good, almost always good defensively. They're usually very good and just can't hold up their end of the bargain all year long because the offense has been so dreadful the last few years. I'd be worried about going in to that stadium. It's going to be loud. It's going to be nuts without A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts trying to, make it happen against that defense because he did not play well against the Falcons defense. Not quite sure why people keep saying he did. I get that he played gutty and gritty and had a lot of great runs, but we're year 5 here with Jalen Hurts now. And if running for first down because he leaves the pocket early is what we're congratulating him for, I think that's misguided and not beneficial.
I would agree with that. I think, one of the things that was encouraging that we did see him kind of lower the shoulder, kind of run, and kind of was more of the guy that we saw in 2022 with his legs. But the decision he makes late in the game, that's 6 straight games now that he has an interception. 6.
Yeah. And I can tell you I encourage people to listen to Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell and me and Adam tomorrow, because we've already hatched it out and found some plays, 4 or 5 plays where there's open players that he's just not seeing because he's just getting out of the pocket. And it's not like he was under a whole lot of duress, but he gets out of that pocket and he doesn't keep his eyes down the field. And then when you get out, you limit the other half of the field. There were some plays to be made that he did not make in the passing game. And just saying, hey, but he's so gritty and gutty and got them back and put 21 points on the board without A.J. Brown, I don't think it's beneficial. I think it's not right. I don't think he played a very good game.
Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, you can get that on all podcasting platforms. Getting ready for the Eagles and the Saints. Man, this game looked a lot different in May. It looked a lot different in May than it does right now. Saints team, all of a sudden, offense. They got a good defense. They had a solid defense last year. Their offense was just kind of And here they are now with an offense with a lot of speed, well-designed plays. Sunday at 1 o'clock, you can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Moshe, we'll talk to you on Monday.
All right, take care, Mike.
Jeff Moshe will be back on Monday's edition of Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. You can watch the show there. We've got plenty more to come, including this hour being brought to you by Jersey Cal. Oh, man, Jersey Cal right up the road from our Northfield studios has everything homemade right here in South Jersey. Northfield, Brigantine, they're open every day from noon until 10 at both their Northfield and Brigantine locations. Ice cream is a year-round thing at Jersey Cal, and they bring you the 4 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Kerr tonight at 5 o'clock. Nick Earnshaw. Nick's Nuggets are coming up next. You'll hear the Nuggets. What is on Nick's mind? Find out next here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar. I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ Bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and zero weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar. Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
4:31 this hour is brought to you by Jersey Cow. Open noon to 10. Why do I keep getting that wrong? Northfield and Brigantine location. I've been to both locations. I enjoy them greatly. Jersey Cow, thank you for sponsoring the 4 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash. Mike Gill. Nick Earnshaw is here. He is host of Nick's Nuggets each and every day at 4:30 right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. He's host of the Shift podcast and producer of The Locker Room weekends on 97.3 ESPN. He is brought to you by the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar, booking games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It's another edition of Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. What's up, Nick?
What's going on, Mike? I mean, busy day in the Philadelphia sports world. And we just had some news drop in the last hour or so. The Sixers aren't coming to New Jersey, Mike. They're not coming to South Jersey. Mayor Cheryl Parker of Philadelphia announced the agreement that they are going to build this stadium. It's going to get approved by the board in Philadelphia to build a stadium in Center City. They think it's going to bring in $1.3 billion of private investment, which means hundreds of millions of new tax revenue for the city. New Jersey, they were kind of just used, I guess, to drive up the price as well as leverage to get what the Sixers wanted, was to play in the middle of Center City. That's nugget number one, Mike, a big one this afternoon.
Yeah, I saw that announcement made, which is funny. So the other day, all right, I'm just kind of perusing through, doing some research for the show, getting ready, and I come across an article that basically, I'm going to read the first paragraph of the article. Now, I wrote the article last week, right, that said, hey, why not Mays Landing? And I said it was far-fetched. So here is an article from Architectural Magazine, and it says, in response to massive grassroots protests against plans by Gensler to build 76th Place, a speculative $1.3 billion basketball stadium in Philadelphia's Chinatown, 76 DeVco is now eyeing sites in Camden, Cape May, and Atlantic City for its new home. So I reached out to the Sixers, and they said Camden is legitimate. Cape May and Atlantic City are not. So basically, I was told they would not move down this far, which I understood, which I thought. But then the news came out today about them staying in Philadelphia. So it sounds as if this might have been something that was in the works. You know, like they kind of figured that this was the spot they were going to go.
Yeah, I mean, this is where they wanted to go initially, right? And then within the past couple of months, you heard the reports that New Jersey had an offer with the Camden site. And then you brought up the Mays Landing. And, you know, then you had those reports with Atlantic City, Cape May, right? A lot of it, I feel like, was leverage for the city of Philadelphia and the Sixers. Like, hey, we might go to New Jersey. We might go across the bridge. If you don't let us build in the middle of the city. I was shocked that it came like so instant, so quickly that boom, announcement, agreement was made. Probably a lot of things going on behind closed doors. But when it comes to the Sixers and this whole arena thing, it's going to be interesting getting in from Jersey now, right? Like getting in transportation-wise, probably going to have to take public transportation into the stadium for the most part. That might be the easiest way to go for Jersey residents right now. If they're going to build this into Center City, the city wasn't going to turn down all this money to build up Center City again, especially in a post-COVID world, right? Like after COVID, city kind of died out, not as many people going back to work, etc. Like, it's only 2-3 day work weeks, a lot of remote work as well. Trying to get people back into the city, I could see why they would want to bring this stadium into Market Street. So it makes sense from the city's perspective. This is what the Sixers wanted to do. For the fans, I would rather them stayed in the sports complex and built over there, right? Now you're probably going to have to take public transportation, especially from the Jersey side, to get in and watch a Sixers game. But it's a couple years away.
Yeah. Now I'm not all that excited about the move. Number one, I don't know the area all that well. Like I can't visualize where this is going to go. So would you take the Ben Franklin to get there, or are you taking the wall? I'm imagining you take the Ben Franklin, right?
Yeah, I think you could take the Ben. I mean, you could take either one.
Right, you
honestly.
take either one, but
10th and Market.
But
yeah.
Which one is like the easier access to get there?
Oh, I would say Ben Franklin probably the Ben Franklin to get in. If you're coming from the Jersey side, this was probably the best way to get to Market Street. But you could also take the Walt Whitman, go down 76, get off at like one of the 20th Street, Market Street, like 20th Street, 20th and Market. I think you could get off there around that area and then go down 10 blocks. But Ben Franklin could take you right into Center City.
Yeah, see, I hate the Ben Franklin.
It's interesting.
Anything that makes me have to take the Ben Franklin, I hate. I hate the Ben Franklin. I hate getting off and then coming in and you're like, I do not like the Ben Franklin. I mean, listen, if you're asking me, no, I do not like the Center City thing. I don't know why they felt like this was what they wanted to do. I mean, I get it. You wanted your own building? There's plenty of options to build your own building that didn't inconvenience everybody. I listen, maybe we'll grow to like it and this will be something that we end up getting used to, but I can't see this being a very popular decision for many people.
No, I think there's going to be a lot of people upset. I know Chinatown is going to be protesting this whole thing. They put out a statement paraphrasing that Cheryl Parker, the mayor of Philadelphia, did not even meet with them. So they're pushing back very strongly against this. So it's going to be fascinating. And to think about this, too, like we're kind of just thinking about when the stadium's built, like how much trouble it is going to be getting to a game and leaving a game in the middle of the city, all that. What about the construction? The construction leading up to it. That could be a nightmare as well. If you work there, you're just going in to visit, that could cause delays in traffic as well. So the construction aspect over the next however many years, once it gets approved, that's another aspect you got to think about, because this isn't going to be until 2031, 32.
2031.
Yeah, so there's going to be a long process of building this whole thing and seeing how it all shakes out. That's going to cause delays for a long time. So this isn't just a problem when the stadium is built. This is going to be a problem for years leading up to it.
Yeah, listen, anything that has to do with being in the middle of the city, and I'm taking everything else. I'm taking, I guess people are somewhat concerned for safety and being in the city and parking, all of that stuff. I'm not even taking all of that out. I don't want anything to do with having to drive in and out of a city to go to a game. Just the logistical issues of doing that, it does not appeal to me one bit. Now, you're not trying to get by 2031. My God, I'll be in my 50s. So
I'll be in my 30s.
You're probably.
I can't even think about that, Mike.
Yeah,
don't even get me started.
You're probably not worried about whether or not a 50-plus-year-old Mike Gill is going to drive into the city to go to a game.
Oh, I'll be 31 years of age. I don't even want to think about that. We got a little bit of time here before that happens. Let me enjoy my 20s, 76ers for a little while while this is all going on. But yeah, it looks like it's about to happen. There's probably going to be a little bit of pushback, but ultimately it looks like the Sixers got what they wanted. Philadelphia is getting what they wanted. The city, at least, the people in charge are getting what they wanted. And this is going to happen. So no Sixers in South Jersey, unfortunately. Not Camden, not Mays Landing, not Cape May, not Atlantic City. Center City it is for the 76ers. All right, nugget number 2, got to talk about the question of the day, Mike. Nick Sirianni not talking after the game. Now, I've seen this conversation out there a little bit. I know you and Mosher spoke on it a little bit. I find it fascinating. The coach of a NFL franchise, after a loss like that, did not talk to his team after a loss. I think that's mind-boggling. And remember, he gave up a lot of the pull on offense. So now he's kind of have to be that. He has to be that motivator type coach, right? Like that's what you want to be. And a lot of players look at him that way. I know Hurts spoke after the game. I get it. He took control. Good leadership by him. Fine, but not even a word from Sirianni. I think that's a little egregious, especially week 2 when the house season ended last year. He could have said something.
I don't know what the context of nothing means. Does it mean I didn't sit everybody down and address them, or I didn't even walk into the locker room and address them? I mean, I have no problem if Jalen Hurts, because to me, we're not talking enough about the decision that Hurts made and how that game ended, because I think it was a terrible decision. That decision there was not getting criticized and looked at as much because of the 3rd and 3 and then kicking the field goal and then how awful your defense was in the final, minute and a half of that game. But the decision that Hurts makes, that to me is right up there with some of the worst things. So for the leader of the team, Jalen Hurts, say, Coach, I threw that interception. Let me address him. I think that's okay.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there, because I like seeing Hurts take control, be the leader, right? We were on him last year for not being as vocal enough on the sidelines, right, and not being a vocal leader. And it's not really how he runs himself and how he is. I think that's the positive of this, looking at it positively. Look at that. Look at us looking at it a positive way here. I like that aspect. But to have Sirianni, I don't know what Sirianni did. Like, it sounds like he didn't even address it. Go ahead, Jalen, you do it. But I think Sirianni still has to say something.
I don't know what again. You're insinuating that he didn't want to and just said no. You do it. I don't know that that's how it went down. To me, it sounds perfectly okay if Hurts grabbed him and said, Coach, let me address the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I still think he's got to say something. It's coming off as though he didn't really address the team, after this loss, and went up there. And, he's the leader of the team. He's the coach. I understand Hurts is the quarterback, but he's the head coach. He's supposed to be this motivator. That's not a lot of motivating right there.
Yeah, but, listen, for people, look, coaching is one of those things, too, where you got to pick your spots sometimes.
True.
If you're constantly the one that is riding and grading and constantly the one that's always riding these players, they start to tune you out. So at some points, you might say, you know what, if someone wants to step up and be the leader, that's a good chance for me to kind of let my voice take a rest on these players. It's early in the season. I'm going to be the one all season long. So again, I don't know the context. It does sound bizarre if he said nothing. If he just said, I'm going home, talk to you guys on Wednesday or Tuesday or whatever, then that would be a little weird.
Yeah, that would be odd. And that's where I would be extremely frustrated. He's like, all right, peace out, guys. Jalen, you got it from here. Then there's a lot more to talk about, a lot more issues with that conversation. But Sirianni, not really talking to the team after the game. Hey, Jalen Hurts kind of took control. Good for Jalen on that part. All right, nugget number 3. Got to move along. Craig Kimbrell, old buddy. Craig Kimbrell, closer for the Philadelphia Phillies last year, moved to the Orioles this year, signed a 1-year, $13 million deal with them. Phillies saw them early in the year, outside of club option as well. So he got DFA'd, Mike.
No interest. No interest.
DFA, no injuries. He had a 10.
No. I said no interest.
No interest.
None.
10.59 ERA, 18 outings after the All-Star break. That was what his record was. I mean, that's pretty bad. I mean, how about our old buddy Craig Kimbrell getting DFA'd? I mean, how about that?
Yeah, I got no interest in. I thought you were going to ask, do I have any interest in bringing him back? I was saying no interest at all.
No.
Listen, he had a great start to the season for them, but, the Kimbrell, it's a shame. He's a guy that I think has outlasted what we all thought when the Phillies signed him last year. I said, man, they're not going to get any. What were they thinking? He actually was an all-star for them last year. Now he ran out of gas at the end, and I couldn't believe a team with World Series aspirations like the Orioles took a chance on him. And he got off to a good start for them, but like last year, the wheels started to fall off, and I think Kimbrell's probably out of teams and at the end of the road. He's had a great career. But the last 2 stops on championship level teams have not gone well for him.
Yeah, not great. Ran out of gas a little bit earlier this year after the All-Star game. That's where it really fell apart. DFA'd like that's pretty egregious there. And it felt like Phillies fans were trying to warn Orioles fans, especially when they played them early on in the season. Like, hey, you enjoy it now. You hit a below 3 ERA to start the season, the first half. Second half, that's when it really fell apart. A little bit earlier this year when the wheels fell off for Craig Kimbrel down in Baltimore. But, we tried to warn them. So on social media, you see all these Phillies fans being nice to the Orioles fans. Like, hey, he's going to fall apart at some point. And it happened quicker than I think anyone could imagine. He did have a good career. Unfortunately, it was mostly with the Atlanta Braves, not with the Phillies. But he is now a free agent. He's gone. See ya. Not an Oriole anymore. He's not even going to get to make a postseason run. That's why they go out and trade with the Phillies for a Seranthony Dominguez as well, and a Soto.
Yeah, if you look at the Phillies bullpen now, without Kimbrel, you said, okay, look, I wasn't saying that Kimbrel was great, but you had to replace a guy who was your leading save guy last year, and now they've really found 4 to 5 guys who they feel like can close games out. Something that Rob Thompson said the other night. Last night, Hoffman came in the game. They said, why Hoffman, not Estevez? It wasn't a closing situation. He had said, hey, look, Hoffman was hot. He warmed up in the 7th and the 8th, so we just went with him. But he said, we feel like we've got a bunch of guys that can close games out. And that's one of the big differences that they have this year as opposed to last year, which is why they kept going to Kimbrel, because they didn't really have another option to close games out.
Yeah, he was kind of the guy they had to go to. And, he fell apart in the biggest moment. Unfortunately, that's what he'll be remembered for. He won't be remembered for that all-star appearance for the Phillies last year. Unfortunately, they always look at what you did in the postseason. What have you done for me lately? Didn't do much for the Phillies towards the end of the year and the end of the line. But this might be the end of the line of Craig Kimbrel's career. All right. Final nugget
By the way,
number 4.
23 saves for Kimbrel this year with the Orioles. It's 23 more than I ever thought we were ever going to see him get throughout the rest of his career after last year. So hat tip to him for even getting 23. By the way, Seranthony Dominguez has 9 saves and a whip of 1.03 and a 3.26 ERA with Baltimore.
He's been solid. He's been solid as of late for the O's. So got to give him credit where credit is due with Seranthony. But yeah, Craig Kimbrel, goodbye. See ya. DFA'd. No longer part of the Baltimore Orioles. And he's not coming to the Phillies. I can tell you that right now. They are not going to sign him. You do not want a Craig Kimbrel at this point in the season. All right. Final nugget number 4. How about Adrian Wojnarowski with the biggest Woj bomb maybe of his career, Mike? He's retiring from ESPN and News altogether, going to St. Bonaventure to become their general manager in college. He's totally leaving the tweets behind, News behind. He's not going to be breaking any more stories for ESPN. I had his notifications on for years, Mike, so I knew what was happening that second, that instant. When Paul George landed, when Tyrese Maxey was drafted, all the reports coming out for the Sixers, I was always waiting for Woj. He's retiring. That was gigantic news today in the media world.
I was listening to it live. I was listening to Greeny when it happened. I was just sitting here, and all of a sudden, Greeny says, wow, with a huge Woj bomb. And I'm thinking, a Woj bomb? I mean, what could possibly be that big in the NBA world on September 18th at a Woj bomb other than Woj himself retiring? These new roles, you're seeing GMs now for college programs in the NIL world and all this stuff. I know Villanova has one. Schools are starting to get GMs to put recruiting together, help with NIL. It's a new world that we're living in.
It's wild. It's a wild world that we're living in now, but that is the reality. And that was something I did not have on my bucket list, especially like you mentioned, a Woj bomb in September. I'm thinking, is there a trade? What is going on? The season hasn't even started yet. Training camp's right around the corner. What could possibly have happened? And, Adrian Wojnarowski retiring, now becoming a part of the college recruiting process, general manager for his alma mater, St. Bonaventure. Props to Woj. I will still have your notifications on. I won't turn them off in case he ever wants to come back.
You think he tweets anymore, or have we seen his last tweet?
I think he still tweets. He probably tweets about the program. I could see that happening. The program that he's with now at St. Bonaventure. That's what I could see. Maybe updates, things like that. But it's not going to be any NBA news, unfortunately.
Do you think the ESPN makes a run at Shams.
I think so. I was talking to a buddy of mine, texting about this today. Before the reports were kind of flying around, he was like, I think Shams might go to ESPN, and I'm kind of with him.
He's
that
a
could
free
have Chris
agent.
Haynes as a free agent as well. Jake Fisher, that's another name I could see maybe going to ESPN as well. One of those NBA guys has to fill kind of that role. Shams is now the lead dog in the NBA reporting right now.
By the way, Jake Fisher lives down the shore. He listens to our show. So,
what a guy. He's fantastic as well.
Hopefully he gets a job. All right, Knicks Nuggets right there here on the Sports Bash Live. I got you. We'll do the Phillies lineup. It's up on the screen if you're watching the live video at Mike Gill Show on the X platform. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Bohm, Stott, Marsh, Rojas, Stubbs. No Real Muto again tonight. No Cal Stevenson. Looks like they got a right-handed pitcher in the lineup for Milwaukee. It's Freddie Peralta's pitching tonight against Aaron Nola. So Rojas in the center field spot after Stevenson had been there the last couple of days. And that is your Phillies lineup. All right, Nick, we'll talk to you on Thursday.
All right, talk to you tomorrow, Mike.
There's Knicks Nuggets. They're brought to you by the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. We'll be there on Monday. Tomorrow, Thursday Night Football on 97.3 ESPN, and we're going to be live at Chickies and Pete's at the Tropicana in Atlantic City. Stop out tomorrow and check us out over at Chickies and Pete's Tropicana. Coming up, Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports. Overreactions. We don't do that, do we? Do Phillies fans ever overreact? I don't know people to do that listen to this show. That's next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort studio, here's Mike Gill.
5 o'clock, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. What's up, everybody? 5 o'clock hour brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City. Some unbeatable lease offers. My friend Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City. Now through the end of the month, you could drive home a 2025 Integra for $399 a month with $29.95 down. And I'm telling you, that RDX 2024 all-wheel drive, it's yours, $393 a month with $49.95 down. Visit Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road, EHC, the small but friendly dealer. Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports, he's got a lot of observations, overreactions, and the like over at CBSSports.com. He's going to join us here in just a moment to talk more Eagles. You know, Jalen Hurts is speaking right now. I'm going to try to, maybe I'll pot to him in just a second here. McMullen just asked him a question. How difficult is it to prepare when you don't know if A.J. Brown's going to play? And Hurts basically said, I didn't think he was ever going to play. So he basically squashed that answer. And then he asked him, well, do you think he's going to play this week? And he basically said, I don't know. Then he was asked about Dotson, and he said, well, it's unfortunate that he didn't get a chance to be a part of the workout program. It sounds like a pretty frustrated Jalen Hurts after the game the other night. We'll see where this ends up going. But if you take a look at all of the things that happened in this game, we're going to get Jeff Kerr's take on overreactions and how they move forward as NFL writer Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports joins the Sports Bash right now on 97.3 ESPN. There he is. Jeff Kerr is back on the Sports Bash as we take a look at this Eagles unbelievable. I don't even know what's a word to use to describe that loss that could be on the radio?
Shocking.
Shocking.
Is that? Yeah, Mike, and it's funny because I sit next to Andrew DeCecco in the press box, our good buddy Andrew DeCecco. And I said to him after Barkley dropped that and they kicked the field goal, something tells me a Kirk Cousins game-winning touchdown drive's coming. You just had that feeling, right?
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because when they score, I was telling the story yesterday, Jeff. I started watching the game outside with the Phillies on one TV and the Eagles on the other. When the Phillies game ended, I went inside to my living room. When the Eagles kicked that field goal, I turned off the living room TV, and I went into the bedroom, and I said to my girlfriend, they're going to lose this game. And sure enough, they went right down the field, and, bang, there it goes. So shocking is it. Give me what to you is the most shocking part about it.
I think the fact that they thought these collapses were behind them from last year, and they're not. They lost 3 games in the final when they had the lead in the final 2 minutes last year. And somehow they did this again in the second game of the season. Remember, they did it against the Jets in week 6. The Seahawks game we all remember in week 15, I believe it was. That was the game where the red flags really came out on this football team.
That game, the game on Monday night seemed a lot like the Seahawk game.
It did, because the defense was playing well, not great, but they were playing well enough to win a football game. And that's where I kind of agree with Nick Sirianni, where he says, hey, look, our defense was getting the job done. They were holding them in the red zone. But again, when you hold teams in the red zone 6 times, or they get to the red zone 6 times, you only allow 1 touchdown 6 times. That statistic is eventually going to turn in the other team's favor. Mm-hmm. I think I was more upset about how quickly the Falcons were able to get to the red zone more than the actual result.
Well, and that goes to a lot of different things. We could talk about the 3rd and 3 call where they end up passing the football. Some people hate that call. Some people like it. The people who hate it say, look, 40 seconds are going to come off the clock. Here's the problem. If you run the ball and don't get the first down and the 40 seconds come off the clock and then you kick the field goal, Atlanta still has enough time to go down and score as fast as they went down and scored. They took a minute 5 to go down the field. So even running the ball and taking 40 seconds off the clock doesn't guarantee anything.
I have agreed with a lot of the people that have stated their case to run the ball on 3rd down, but this has been my argument with it the whole time. How can you disagree with a play that worked? It worked. It just wasn't executed because the running back dropped the football. I don't understand, Mike.
Yeah, well, I had somebody message me today and say, you got to blame the coach. It's up to the coach to put the player in position to make a play. What, wide open isn't in position to make a play? He schemed the guy wide open.
You know what, Mike? I know you know this, too, just from being a radio host. Don't you get tired of it's always the coach's fault, no matter what happens?
It's the coach's fault in the basketball. It was Brett Brown's fault, then it was Doc Rivers' fault, and now it's going to be Nick Nurse's fault. It was Kapler was the worst. Girardi was the worst. Now Thompson's the worst. Now it's Nick Sirianni. It's always the coach. At what point as a fan do you start looking at yourself and saying, every coach in the world can't be this bad? It has to be more blame on the players. I agree. Could he have run the ball? Sure. But okay, they're going to take 40. That would have made it more challenging for Atlanta, no doubt. But Atlanta went down the field and scored in a minute. So It didn't guarantee that they were going to win that game if they ran the ball. Then the other part of it, which was talked a lot about today, I want your thoughts on this because you wrote about this over at CBS Sports. It's a good conversation and a good article to go read over at CBSSports.com, why Nick Sirianni feels more confident about kicking the field goal. Because quite frankly, I thought kicking the field goal was the absolute right decision. You go up 6, you make them have to score a touchdown on a night where your defense has kept them out of the end zone.
Yeah, Mike, and look, I don't have a problem with Nick kicking it. I really don't. Me, personally, I would have went for it and won the game. But, again, this point is all moot if Saquon Barkley catches a football anyway. This is how I viewed this game. Anything that happened after that Barkley drop, I just used the cause and effect theory. Well, if he doesn't drop that ball, we're not talking about Nick kicking a field goal. We're not talking about the defense giving up 6 plays for a score in a minute 1. We're not. But I understand why Nick kicked the field goal, but I will say this. He's wrong about the analytics thing because NFL Next Gen stats literally have this. The Eagles' percentage chance of winning before they kicked the field goal on that 4th and 3 scenario at the 13 was 94%. After they kicked it, to give the Falcons the ball. See, this is what happens, Mike. I'm covering the Vikings game this week, and Kirk Cousins on the Vikings for hell. Anyway, it goes down to 85%. And you're wondering how can that be? But then you think of it this way. Okay, the Falcons are probably playing for a field goal if you go for it and don't convert, right? I'm sure they'll want to play for a touchdown, but they know they got the field goal in their back pocket. When you know you have to get a touchdown, I feel like, yes, Nick is right. There is more pressure, but you also know you have to take a chance, and you have to bank on the Eagles not blowing coverages. For some reason, Vic Fangio played the ultimate version of prevent defense I've ever seen.
Well, and let's get into some overreactions. We'll get into that. Let's start with your first one over at CBS Sports. Jeff Kerr does a great job covering the NFL. You guys make sure you follow all of his NFL coverage, especially his Eagles stuff. Barkley's drop. Blame him for the loss. What do you say?
Well, I said yes. That's not a reaction because Barkley said it himself. I use Barkley's quotes. He's blaming himself. The quarterback had to come over and talk to him to make sure he was okay. So I'm looking at it as, yeah, Barkley probably thought what we all thought. I just cost us a football game.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, do you want to single out one player? No, of course not. I agree with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a lot of the players in there. No, it's not just a one player. We're all at fault. But, again, the cause and effect theory here, he catches the ball, the Eagles are 2-0.
Yeah, and this goes back to the guy who tweeted at me this morning that you got to blame the coach. It's up to the coaches to put players in position to make the plays.
He was in position to make the plays.
He was wide open. He was wide open.
You know what, Mike? That's what. And again, I think you saw me Friday night. I was at the Phillies game. I covered the Phillies game, right? When they're getting killed by the Mets, why is it Rob Thompson's fault Aaron Nola can't locate a pitch?
Rob Thompson is the whipping boy any night the Phillies lose.
Rob Thompson forgets more about baseball than anybody knows.
Believe me, I've seen the reactions on nights they lose. It is unbelievable how disliked he is by the Phillies. The fans who just don't like him, and people go in preconceived thoughts in their head. They don't either. People either like the coach or they don't. There's never any he's winning me over, or he does things that I like, or he does things that I don't like. They either just like him or don't. And whenever they lose, it is just extra fuel and ammunition to see, he's wrong. He's the wrong guy. Listen, I don't know if Sirianni's the right guy or the wrong guy. I know they've had a lot of success under him. I know the players have all, Jason Kelce and high-profile players have all said how he holds people accountable and how much they love playing for him. I have to imagine that inside that organization and that locker room that they like Nick. That being said, the decision to throw on third down by Kellen Moore, what do you say? Correct call or not?
I think it was just because, and look, you got to remember I wrote these early reactions right after the game too, so I might have reversed my call here.
You've cooled down a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, look, they had 7-8 in the box. They were waiting for Barkley. I really do feel it would have been a run play if Saquon Barkley wasn't that wide open. I think it was Jalen Neer takes a sack or tries to get the 3 himself, but Saquon was wide open. You have to throw it. I mean,
well, he was asked after the game, Jeff. Was there anything put in there that if that play's not open to just take a sack or go down and let whatever? And he said, yeah. Well, the problem is the play materialized and the guy was wide open, so he threw it to him.
I think even Saquon was shocked he was wide open, but it was a great play call. I thought Kellen Moore called a pretty good game outside of the first series or two. I actually thought he adjusted as the game went on, and it worked out well for him. It wasn't going to be a night where the Eagles scored 30 points, but they did enough.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. Let's get some more overreactions or realities here. He has them up over at CBSSports.com. They're always fun to read after every Eagles game in the NFL. You can check out all his coverage. So, should the Eagles have gone for it on 4th down? They went for it on 3rd. They threw a pass, which this is where it's interesting, Jeff, because they were aggressive on 3rd with the pass play. And then they weren't aggressive on 4th down. They kicked it. Now, I don't have a problem with them kicking it on 4th, but the mentality of being aggressive on 3rd and then not aggressive on 4th, is it an overreaction that they should have went for it on 4th down?
Nick Sirianni is a guy who usually is aggressive. That's what's so shocking about him kicking, right? And like you said, Mike, he threw the ball on 3rd. Why wouldn't you just try to win the game on 4th? Oh, by the way, you went for it on 4th and 4 at the opponent's 9-yard line in the first quarter, and he didn't get it. Then you kick once in the second half down there. It's like, okay, I get it. You're trying to make. I think Nick Sirianni really did try to make up for not converting that 4th down in the first quarter.
What'd you think of that call?
I didn't mind it. I still don't mind it. I just wish he'd be more consistent with being aggressive. But, he talks to the analytics department. I don't care about the analytics department. Guess what analytics tell me, Mike? There's a 50-50 chance that play's going to work or not.
All right, let's go to another. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. A.J. Brown showed that he's the most valuable player on the offense. What do you think?
I still say it's Lane Johnson, but A.J. Brown's making this case,
That's a technicality, right?
Yeah, it is. It's more of, I want to get the point out there that A.J. Brown's really good at his job and is really valuable to this football team, as we all know. But it's like, okay, let's make a good reaction. Who's more valuable, A.J. or Lane Johnson? Well, I've seen the Eagles without Lane Johnson. You've seen the Eagles without Lane Johnson for a decade. It ain't pretty. It's actually really ugly. The Eagles seem to, they've at least calmed the storm a bit on Monday night when there was no A.J. Brown. The problem is they only threw one pass of 20-plus air yards downfield, and it was picked off.
Yeah, well, how much did the fact that they didn't go 20-plus air yards at all the whole night play into that last decision?
I think it played a huge role. And, they were good on medium routes, like between 10 and 20 yards. Jalen was 6 for 6 on finding on those plays. But it was funny how they ain't good. And I still think this is the state of the NFL right now, too. They're just taking away the deep pass. But if you don't have a deep ball receiver like A.J. Brown, it's weird. Like, we call A.J. Brown the deep ball receiver because he's kind of a mix of everything. But the guy averages 15 yards per catch for a reason. They missed him.
All right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. Let's go to we're looking at Jeff's overreactions in reality over at CBSSports.com. Let's go to the defensive side. The Eagles' pass rush, is it an overreaction that they don't have a pass rush, or is that the reality?
Bryce Huff has as many pressures as Mike Gill and Jeff Kerr right now. So, yeah, I that is my biggest takeaway from this game. They got nothing on the edge between Bryce Huff, who looks like a deer in the headlights, who just is getting overmatched by everybody. Nolan Smith isn't any better. I mean, obviously, we're all pointing out to the Bijan Robinson chop block, but it's more than that. Josh Sweat had a good game Monday night. I think he ended up with 6 pressures. Him and Brandon Graham are fine, but you paying Bryce Huff $17 million a season. Oh, by the way, he's a Hassan Reddick replacement, and he's got as many sacks as Hassan Reddick, who hasn't played. And Nolan Smith, to me, there's something up with him, Mike.
Well, I didn't like the signing. I didn't like the signing when they made it for a couple of reasons. One, contract year, he gets 10 sacks. Guy no one has ever heard of before. 10 sacks. Yep. Then he gets $51 million. Okay, if I'm looking at my schedule and I see the Eagles on my schedule this year and I'm coach of all the teams that play against the Eagles, I'm saying, how the hell did this guy get $51 million? Where did he come from? I got to watch some tape on this guy. And I think everybody just watch this guy. He's got nothing. He's got no moves. He's got nothing. He's just getting pushed. He's not strong enough. He's a one-trick pony. I didn't like the signing when they made it. And I said, even if this guy is his best version of himself, he ain't going to be better than Hassan Reddick. And if you're not as good as that, this team doesn't have enough pass rush. And we're really seeing it now.
This franchise just doesn't learn with certain players. Pay them. Jeremiah Trotter, 22 years ago. Pay him. Pay him. Hassan Reddick, I don't care how old he is. He's still productive. Was he a problem in the locker room last year? Yes, but he wanted his money. Pay him. You know, I just don't understand. If you sign Bryce Huff and keep Hassan Reddick, I'm more on board with the Bryce Huff signing because that's the premium rate. But you're right. Did the Eagles fall in love with a guy who the only reason he beat the Eagles in Week 6 was because Lane Johnson got hurt?
Well, it's a good question, but I'll tell you this. This defensive line right now has two problems. One, you sign Bryce Huff and you don't have any other place to go. There's no place else to look because Nolan Smith is getting snaps but getting no pressure. So it's not like, hey, you're not giving Nolan Smith a shot. He's got a shot too, and he's stealing Huff's jersey, a 0. And Jalen Carter.
It's fitting Bryce Huff wears 0.
Very fitting. And Jalen Carter has been an absolute disappointment through 2 games. Last year, through 2 games, you were like, wow. And then he tailed off late. Now through 2 games, he's giving you nothing.
And I don't even worry about Jalen Carter because I think he'll turn around because he's shown he can do that. But when you got Jordan Davis who gives you nothing, Nolan Smith who gives you nothing, Bryce Huff who gives you nothing, they're double teaming Jalen Carter to stop him. You could bet it's frustrating.
All right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, and, of course, you can check him out over at CBSSports.com. There's some overreactions from that game the other night. And, hey, what about Jalen Hurts, the leader? Sirianni said, I didn't say a word. Do you find that odd, or do you kind of like that?
Boy, people blew that up more than I anticipated there, Mike, when Reed Blankenship said.
It goes into they want to find more ammunition on why they don't like the coach.
Yeah. And you know what? Even national analysts were like, what is this guy doing? And I'm like, look, I just reported what Reed said, right? And I'll say this. I asked other players. Yeah, they said Jalen took control of everything. None of the coaches said anything. They didn't say it in a bad way. They just said Jalen took control of it. I'm actually glad Nick kind of admitted it today. Because I wasn't sure if that was something the Eagles would shoot down or not. But, you know, I don't fault Nick for that. But it does make you wonder. The number one question I get at my Q&As at Island Pizza every Tuesday night, and I get this from friends too. What does Nick Sirianni do?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I tell him? I don't know.
Well, all right. Well, okay, so somebody texted that in earlier. And listen, I don't think that's fair to ask. I mean, you say I don't know, but I don't think that's really fair because there's a lot of coaches in this league that don't call the plays. Now, it's fair to ask if this team has not had success in his tenure. They went to a Super Bowl. They've been to the playoffs all 3 times. I feel like saying I don't know what he does is not fair to him. Because
no, it's not. Well, you know, I say I have the same answer for John Harbaugh. I have no idea what he does.
Exactly. Like Mike Tomlin doesn't call the plays. I don't know what he does, but he's had success. John Harbaugh doesn't call the plays. I don't know what he does, but he's had success. Dan Campbell doesn't call their plays in Detroit. These guys are game planners, motivators. They keep the locker room together. Now, you might say the Eagles' locker room maybe is a problem. I don't know that that's an issue. Is their locker room a problem?
I personally think Nick does a lot of his work between Sunday and Wednesday.
Yeah, I think Nick does a lot of game planning. I think he does a lot of research. I think, like today, how well researched was his answer today?
Oh, beautiful. It was a beautiful answer. He went into detail. Now, of course, Eagles PR is probably telling him he's going to get this question, but he knows what's coming. He's not stupid.
No.
I think Nick Sirianni pays. I think where Nick Sirianni gets a lot of hate is stuff like Monday night when C.J. Gardner-Johnson makes the play, he's running and yelling and doing his stuff. I think that's what people like to see guys like that fail. It's just a walk of life.
All right, Jeff Kerr. We got so much, going into this week against the Saints. When this season schedule came out, you saw the Saints in week 3. You thought, all right, it is in New Orleans, but this game in New Orleans all of a sudden has changed a whole heck of a lot. Is it an overreaction to say this Saints team's for real?
I'm not sold yet.
Whoa, not ready, huh?
But I'll say this. This is the Saints team I thought I was going to see last year. I thought the Saints, and Mike, I'm not a Dennis Allen fan as a head coach in the slightest. But I thought, okay, they got Derek Carr. Rashid Shaheed's coming to his own. He's already a great deep ball threat. You had Chris Olave. You have Alvin Kamara. You had a better offensive line last year than you did this year. And you always have a good defense because Dennis Allen is one heck of a defensive coach. I would want him to be my defensive coordinator any day of the week. But I was like, this team's going to win 12 games this year. They won 9. And they were lucky to win 9. They were such a disappointment. I thought Dennis Allen was going to get fired. Well, they did make a firing. They fired Pete Carmichael and Clint Kubiak. I'm like, okay, I'm still not sold yet. And when they beat the crap out of the Panthers, I really wasn't sold because I know the Panthers stink.
Yep.
So, and then they beat the snot out of the Cowboys. Now the radar's up, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this team is definitely better than they were last year. But we still don't know how good the Cowboys are either. I don't know how good the Eagles are. So I wouldn't be shocked if they did score 30-plus on the Eagles.
The Cowboys had won 16 straight home games until Sunday. So they did go to Dallas and win. But we'll see. There's a lot about this Saints team that I've watched the last couple days. I really like their play design. I think their play design is really good. They do a good job of designing things and a lot of confusion behind the line of scrimmage for linebackers, so they get matchups that they like in the slots and the seams. Shaheed's fast, and Kamara being back. He's been hurt the last 2 years.
That's the trick. Alvin Kamara is Alvin Kamara again. Oh, by the way, Jamal Williams is your backup running back. He don't stink either. He had a bad year last year, but yeah, you're right. And by the way, Derek Carr looks so much more happier than he was last year. I couldn't tell if he was hurt, he just didn't like the offense or not, but they were like that team that everybody just kind of wrote off this offseason, including myself. And I remember I put their ceiling as like, well, talent-wise, they should be a 10-11 win team. But I said they're going to be a 7-win team. But my bold prediction this year was Dennis Allen was going to be the first coach fired. Yeah, I'm gonna be way off on that.
All right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports will be back next week. And we'll wrap up the Eagles and the Saints, and we'll take a look at that game a little closer throughout the rest of the week right here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Great job, Jeff. We appreciate you as always, pal.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mike.
As always, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff does a great job. He also covers the Phillies for CBS 3, and when we get into the playoff season, we'll be talking to Jeff about both the Eagles and the Phillies. You can check him out on Twitter at Jeff Kerr CBS. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live if you want to get involved over there. If you want to get the text board reactivated, we've been getting texts all day long. I've had to, I can't catch up. The text has been coming in so much. 609-403-0973. Eagles injury report just came out. And A.J. Brown is the only one, along with Johnny Wilson. They both did not practice today, and that's it. So just A.J. Brown and Johnny Wilson on the injury report on a Wednesday. What else we got? Got anything else that I forgot?
Well, you talked to Jeff Kerr about Garrett Stubbs playing tonight.
We knew that yesterday. Rob Thompson said it last night.
So we talked to him about it.
Asking him about Garrett Stubbs playing tonight.
Why not?
That was the topic. Why not? I knew he was playing tonight. Rob Thompson said it last night.
And you think every person listening to the sound of your voice knows?
Well, the lineup was out a while ago.
Maybe people tuned in.
What's the question you were asking?
Just curious if it's the best idea to have Garrett Stubbs starting tonight. Are you saving JT for the Mets series?
I would imagine.
Is that the theory?
I would imagine so. JT has not really played 5 straight games, and he's been hurt. And you got a right-handed pitcher. You got lefties coming up, so that's probably why.
Good talk.
All right, more Sports Bash coming up. We got a busy Thursday tomorrow. We'll tell you more about that. Plus Friday, we're at Charlie's in Summers Point. It's our final Happy Hour Friday. We hope you stop out to Charlie's in Summers Point this Friday with Bud Light specials and another Happy Hour Friday at Charlie's, 800 Shore Road, Friday in Summers Point. We have.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Traffic. You come with me. The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
If Kellen and I are just having that conversation right then, and we've done a job getting ready all week, that conversation happens throughout. That conversation happened today, right, of what we would be thinking in those scenarios. And it's just, hey, remember we said in this scenario, boom, right? So that's something that we prepped for all week.
Nick Sirianni today, he said, look, we have prepared for that decision all week long. So they knew if that decision comes up, they knew we're going to go for it, or we're going to run a play, or we're going to do this. That's the preparation that goes into the week. Is that acceptable for you? We'll see. I doubt it. I don't think people are going to take anything. Listen, no one's getting their mind changed. I understand that. Like, no one's here to try to change your mind. If you don't like the process, you're just not going to like it. But I do say a lot, this is the game today. If you don't like it, you're going to have to find a new game. It's not changing. Analytics are a part of the game. Analytics are a part of sports. If you don't like that, then just say, I don't like the game. I don't like the way the game is played. That's different.
I think that's the bigger key, Mike, is that for a lot of people, they don't like how the game plays out during the course of the 3 hours. And so they want to pick and choose these abstract or these random items or people or situations that say, see, I told you. But speaking of analytics, Mike, Nick Sirianni said to the media today that analytics is not the deciding factor.
Analytics is a piece. League study is a piece. This game always comes down to players and plays, right? What plays do you have the most confidence in to your players in those particular cases, right? And so that's where your confidence is coming from to go for things on that.
We heard that yesterday from Colin Thompson. It's the plays. It's the players, not the plays, right? It comes down to the players, not the plays. You put the players in a spot, and you hope that they make the play. Here, pass to your hands. Please catch it. That's what it comes down to.
I'm hoping that you do your job. What's the Bill Belichick thing? Do your job, right? I think Sirianni verbalized it very well there. He said, look, it's not analytics that's telling me to go for it or not go for it. He's saying it's a piece of the larger pie of why we do what we do. At the end of the day, the players got to do their job. And I don't think it's Sirianni being dismissive or trying to skirt accountability, but I think he is stating something that is probably obvious to him, but maybe it's not so obvious to other people.
Well, listen, people who don't like analytics, it's never going to register with them. In any sport, it's just not. It's hard for people to have their mind changed. When you have a thought, very infrequently are people going to change your mind unless you're willing to have your mind changed. You have to be open-minded to having your mind changed. And a lot of people just simply aren't. So if you're anti-analytics, you're not all of a sudden going to have a come-to-Jesus moment and be like, you know what? I changed my mind on that. I really support that because you don't like the end result of the analytics having a part in the decision.
Sure, but at the same time, if analytics is not the ultimate reason why the decision is made, shouldn't people accept that as, hey, Nick Sirianni, like he says it right here, I didn't make a decision because it says so on a piece of paper.
No decision that a coach makes is made just on a piece of paper that says the chart says to go for it here. It's not that easy, and it's not that black and white. There's so many things that factor into it. Again, past experiences, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's telling you right there, I'm not telling my guys to kick a field goal or go for it on 4th and 4 because of a piece of paper. So then why do people project onto this guy that that's what he's doing?
There's a lot of reasons. I feel like I don't think Nick is the most popular coach.
100% not.
I think his antics have really hurt people wanting to support him. People look at a coach. This is with everything in life. They look at a coach and perceive him to be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
You look at who is successful. Bill Belichick. He doesn't say anything. He has no personality as the coach. Now we're seeing that he has a little bit more personality in his coaching days. Nick Saban, he's a great coach at the college level. Very stoic, doesn't say much. Certainly not animated, certainly not colorful, certainly not a guy who you say, look at that guy on the sideline. Nick has done too many things outside of coaching that have been brought up. Yelling at the crowd in Kansas City, jumping into the crowd in Indianapolis. You know, the Kansas City game where he signals first down and Jalen Hurts kind of has to push his arm down. Those are the things that I think people think of about Nick more than, and then, of course, we had the technical. Well, what does he do? You can't have a guy standing on the sideline doing nothing. Now, you might start to say whatever he was doing, he was successful. Here's the problem. People don't want to say that. They don't want to say Nick was successful. Whatever he was doing was working, but now it's not. It's he always sucked.
Right.
And that's not fair.
Everybody stinks until they win a championship. Everyone's an idiot. Everyone is stupid. Everyone's a loser until they get a championship. It's just, remember Doug Peterson was a bumbling idiot who couldn't put together a sentence. Then he wins the championship and everybody loves him.
Same with Charlie Manuel. Charlie Manuel is an idiot. And then he won a World Series, and then he was the greatest manager of all time, to the point where people wanted to hire him like 10 years after he had been fired to bring him back because he's the only guy that could ever win. You know, it's just crazy. It's look, Gabe Kapler, who was not a very popular guy, he was an idiot until he went to San Francisco and won 107 games and was the manager of the year. So he evidently wasn't an idiot. He just was not. And I think that's the problem. We judge your personality and then make a decision on whether we like you as the coach.
Correct.
Based on your personality.
Right. Buddy Ryan was loved even though he never won a playoff game.
I say it all the time. Personality over performance is the way that Philadelphia fans judge the players and the coaches. They'll take a guy that I'd like, personality over performance. Buddy Ryan, beloved. Andy Reid, he sucked. I mean, think about that statement.
It's so ridiculous, but yet that's how some people are. And
absolutely.
It's just a fact of life.
It's absolutely how, like Aaron Rowan, everybody loved him. He ran into the wall, face first.
Right.
He was great. And, you know, insert next guy here, not great.
Right, Pat Burrell.
Whoever. People liked Burrell.
They liked Burrell after they won a championship.
Exactly. Well, he was much more liked after a championship, yes.
Exactly.
Before that, he sucked.
Right. Before that, why is this guy on the team?
And to be fair, it's what makes being a sports talk host and following sports and covering sports in this town so appealing, is the just seesaw irrationality that is just abundant. Like, watching a game, it's like they win this game, you're not satisfied. If they lose this game, it's ammunition to say the coach, the manager, whoever, it was their fault. It is never just, the player was put in position to make a play and he didn't make it. It's so rare to hear people just say, you know what, Sirianni, well, it's not even Sirianni, really. It's more Kellen Moore who calls the plays.
By the way, Sirianni said it the other night, and people got mad at him about that, too, remember? See, they asked him a question about the play call, and he goes, well, I don't call the plays. That's Kellen Moore's job. And people were like, oh, see, Sirianni's trying to, skirt accountability again.
But it's never is it the intuition of the fan to say, man, I don't like that play call, but the guy was wide open.
Right.
I wouldn't have done that. That's a horrible call. Never is it the intuition to say, how do you not catch that ball? That's a bad play call. Isn't it? It's crazy how the mind, listen, I'm not telling anybody to change their opinion or think whatever. I have no problem if anybody disagrees with me. I'm not always right. You're not always wrong. We just disagree. That's kind of how sports work. There is no definitive in sports except for the results of a game. Nobody knows whether to pass there was right or to run there was right. It's just a difference of opinion. But ask yourself this question. If you're on the side of they should have run the ball and you hate it that they passed, was there any part of you that says, you know what, I don't like that play call, but man, he was wide open? People just will not allow themselves to get there. They will not allow themselves to say, I wouldn't have called that pass play, but man, he was wide open. So instead they say, I wouldn't have called that play, and therefore it's the coach's fault. Not, man, I wouldn't have called that play, but man, he was open. I got to blame the player for that, even though it's not a play that I really liked. It's crazy wild, the mindset that goes into this stuff.
Well, speaking of blame, I don't know who to blame for this, but Bryce Harper brought up something last night on after the Phillies win, and I've been trying to have this conversation, Mike, for a couple weeks now, and I don't know why this subject has not come up more. Bryce Harper last night.
Yeah, he's Cy Young. It's not even a question now. Just the way he's kind of throwing, the way he's been doing it all year long. He deserves it. He deserved it 3 years ago or 2 years ago, too, when they robbed him of it. So, he deserves it this year, no doubt.
Why are we not talking about Zach Wheeler for Cy Young?
We are talking about Zach Wheeler for Cy Young. He's number 2 in the odds. The problem is there's a guy that has more wins and a lower ERA.
So that's it? We just dismiss all the other stats because of that?
I don't think we're being dismissive of him. I think he's number 2. In the betting odds right now, is he not number 2?
He is, but he's a very strong underdog. He's plus 900.
Well, the one guy's 17-3. It's not like he's up against a guy with that's got a 4 ERA. Look,
Wheeler has a better whip. He has pitched more innings, and he has more quality starts.
I don't have any problem with Sale being the leader right now. He's 17-3.
I think you're overlooking how great Wheeler has been.
I'm not overlooking. He's number 2 in the betting odds.
So the betting odds are the end all be all?
No, that doesn't mean he's going to win. But I have no problem if Chris Sale won, and you said Chris Sale was the Cy Young Award winner. I would say I have no problem with that.
I think you're not digging in here because I think Wheeler, he has a better batting average against than Sale does, for example. So what?
I'm not saying that. My point is, it's not egregious. Sale winning the Cy Young is not egregious. You're not telling me a guy who is 10-8 with a 4.42 ERA. The guy's 17-3 with a whip of 1 and an ERA at 2.35. Now you might say, well, Wheeler has better this, that, or the other thing. Sale's numbers are not egregious to win the Cy Young.
I didn't say they're egregious. I'm asking, why are we not talking about Wheeler for Cy Young?
I think we are. That's my point. I think people
I've heard it nowhere.
Well, then, look, there's only 2 choices. It's Sale or Wheeler. I haven't heard another name. The third guy is Skeens. He's not winning it. He's on the worst team in the National League Central. So it's only 2 guys. The only 2 names I've heard the whole time is Wheeler. In fact, no one's really talked a lot about the Cy Young, mainly because I don't know that there are starting pitching is not as high profile as it once was. That's part of the problem. I think that is part of the issue, is that the starting pitcher is not what he used to be.
Right.
So that has kind of downplayed the conversation. But the only two names that I've heard are Wheeler and Sale. I have not heard – I don't even know who the fourth guy was. I know Skeens was third the last I looked.
For me, I just think it's unfair that Sale is a minus 2,500 favorite at ESPN Bet, and Wheeler's a plus 900. When Wheeler has comparable numbers.
Well, guess what? Put your money where your mouth is and bet Wheeler.
Fine. Doesn't change the fact that I think the odds are ridiculous.
See, the whip numbers are Wheeler's 0.95 and Sale's 1. So they're 0.5 differential.
Right. And
Wheeler's
Sale,
at 256. Sale's 235.
Right. They're comparable numbers.
So that's my point. So it's not egregious. One guy's 17-3. The other guy's 16-6. The other guy's record's clearly better. If you like record, I'm not a big record guy, but I think the voters will go record over Sale over.
Although we have seen Cy Young Award winners not have great records like DeGrom and Felix Hernandez in the past. 219
strikeouts for Sale. He averages 11.4. That's better than Wheeler's. People like power pitchers strikeout. Wheeler's is 9.9. He has 205 strikeouts. So 205 strikeouts in 186 innings. Sale has more strikeouts in less innings. That's another big number for voters.
I totally get that, but he's also pitched fewer innings, as you just said. So you could argue that maybe his ERA would be different if he pitched more innings.
I could, but I could also say if he pitched more innings, maybe he gives up no runs and his ERA drops. He's already winning the ERA category.
Again, comparable numbers. I just think there has been enough of a conversation about Wheeler for Cy Young.
I don't agree with that at all. I think the two names have been Wheeler and Sale. And if you like Sale, I'm surprised it's that big of a difference, minus 2,500 to plus 900. But I have no problem with Sale wins it. I think he's just as deserving as Wheeler is.
That's the big three.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. We'll wrap up the show coming up next.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer. For thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. And up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Time for the Bet365 play of the day. There was a winner last night there, Josh. Iglesias got another base hit. Should I just stick with Iglesias again?
Are you that confident in him?
Be 12 in a row.
It would be.
I like Iglesias to get 12, and I also, last night, I wanted to give you Rooker. He got a hit last night. I think he gets another one tonight. I'm going Iglesias, Rooker, parlay them together, package that up, and get yourself a couple bucks. It's the Bet365 play of the day. Iglesias with a base hit, Rooker with a base hit. Those two guys are my Bet365 play of the day.
You mean Brett Rooker?
That's what I said.
If I'm reading this right, they already played today.
Did they?
The A's just beat the Cubs today.
Did he get a hit?
5-3.
All right. I thought the game was tonight.
Let's see here.
I did not know what time that game was. So did I?
He was 2 for 3.
So if you would have bet that, you would have won. I have it on my sheet to bet tonight, and they played today. Damn it.
You had the right idea.
I didn't realize. Well, he did have 2 hits. Yes, that means he's got a hit now in 9 straight games. These afternoon games on the getaway day. It gets me. Well, go with Iglesias. You want another guy? I'll give you another guy. How about I'm going to go with Aaron Judge. He's got a hit in 6 straight games. So Judge will get a hit tonight. So Iglesias and Judge, a little New York on your Bet365 app.
There you go.
All right, game night's up next. Tomorrow I'm at Chickies and Pete's. Looking forward to it. Always good to get out and about. We'll see you there. Also, Thursday Night Football tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. This has been the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night, everybody.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.